All right, looks like we're live on the channel. Welcome to Thinking Critical YouTube. I'm Wes, I'm your host, and we have a terrific panel for you today. First time on the channel, Tim Lim's writing partner, Mark Pellegrini. What's up, buddy?
Hey, it's good to be here, man.
Yeah, excited to have you. We've heard so much about you from Tim, but we didn't think he was gonna let you come on the channel.
He never takes me anywhere.
We thought he was keeping you in a sack somewhere and just beating you with reeds.
That's how he gets me to write.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he puts the lotion in the basket once I get a page count.
Pretty standard stuff, really.
And he likes it.
Oh my goodness. Oh no, I've got one of my banners on already. All right. Also on the channel today, we got Tim Lim, author, doctor. I think you're an artist too, but what is there anything you don't do, Tim?
I don't play sports.
Oh my
hey, high five.
Woohoo!
I figured you were a basketball
You
guy.
don't have to play them. Yeah,
I did. I used to play basketball, but I suck, so I was a bench warmer.
Yeah. Surprisingly, here in the Philippines, I believe the second shortest country in the world, they love basketball.
Well, you know the team Ginebra. I actually knew the water boy of that team. It's kind of sad. It was an uncle. Yeah.
Got to keep hydrated. Yeah, hydrated.
That's right. High quality A4.
So all the teams here are like sponsored, and there's one of them that's sponsored by San Miguel Beer, and they're called the San Miguel.
All right.
They're the San Miguel Beermen, and my 4-year-old has a Beerman uniform. It's pretty awesome.
They love basketball, and not just that, but they import a lot of their players from America too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Man,
they have to put limits, or they would take all the spots.
Yep.
All right. Also on the panel, Jeremy. Where you been, buddy?
Right here.
Dude, I heard you're a football fan now. I heard, did Shelby converted you?
Sure. I'm really into the OUs. Oh yeah. You ever heard of the OUs? They're the big OUs.
Boomer
Sooners. We got you.
Sooners.
Flip the camera. Shelby says hi.
Nice. Well, hello, Shelby. We're glad that you're in the shot, and hopefully you'll join the panel one day. We hear you like comic books as well.
I know we got a huge stack of them. Our plan after this stream is to organize her and my comics together. There's just stacks of comics everywhere.
You're crossing the streams on your comic.
Keep them separate. Keep them separate.
Yeah. Keep them separate.
My wife has her collection. I've got my collection. They never meet because they never guest and they can't find their books.
We already crossed them. Sorry, guys.
Oh, goodness. All right. Also on the stream, we got Pele, our resident retailer. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, it's a wonderful morning. I've had my 4 hours of sleep and I feel great.
Are you ready to watch some volunteers today?
Boy, they suck ass. But well, they might turn it around. I think they've only 7 or 8 point underdogs this week. So
perfect.
But yeah, I hope everybody's enjoyed their comics this week. Know we are here at the shop. How you doing, Doc?
I'm all right.
Okay.
I'm all right. I had most of the rest of my Windows installed yesterday, and so I didn't get to a comic shop until like 8 o'clock last night. So yeah, I haven't read anything this week.
Let's go with like 7, 8, or 10.
What's that?
I was wondering which version of Windows you went with.
Goodness. He's talking about his house.
10. He's running Windows 10.
But I actually got through my entire stack this week.
Did you?
Oh yeah, I was pretty proud of myself. I was waiting for some things to happen yesterday, but we ended up having to record Geek Span Live. If you haven't watched that, it was a great show, and we had a lot of fun. Also in the chats, we got Eric Breen, friend of the channel. He's a comics aficionado himself. Great dude. Glad he's here. We've got Longbox Diving. I believe he has his own YouTube channel. He's a great guy. And a couple of his questions will be featured tomorrow during our X-Men talks. We got Fox B5 and FF2 as well. Thank you all for joining us. All right, so should we get in with it? Should we start? Mark, Tim, I hear you guys have a you have a book that you're trying to sell right now? You want to tell everybody about it?
Sure, why not? We have Black Ops 2, Black Ops Hare Trigger. That is on Indiegogo right now.
That's a great title.
Oh, thank you. And we're doing really well with it. Right now, we've already hit our funding goal, and all we're trying to do is get basically, we want to get the book square bound. So we're at 11K at the moment, and our stretch goal is at 14 or 15K. So we need about 4K more. But it's a flexible goal. Every bit counts. So I'm just going to announce it right here, but I'm actually extending it for 4 extra days. So it was supposed to end on Monday, but we're going to go until Friday at midnight. So people still have a little bit extra time to back it if they want.
Oh, nice. So if people have to wait for payday, they can still get it in there?
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, she's already got her order in. So, yeah. Did you have a retailer? Right? Did you have a retailer bundle?
We don't. The reason we don't is because obviously, like Antarctic Press, they look at everything that we do, and we thought about this, but Antarctic Press, they look at the numbers, and when they decide that it's a good enough campaign, they decide to release their own, basically their own version of it that's kind of stripped down, but it helps them and it helps the retailers. And so I just thought it almost wouldn't be fair to them to double dip into it. So just as good faith, we let them take the whole cut of the retailers. And by whole cut, I don't mean like we don't get any of it. I mean that they get the full distribution for it.
Okay. Well, I was thinking it would be a pretty boutique thing though, because it would still be a $20 book. So it would, be pretty boutique situation. People that really, really want hops, But I understand. That makes sense. You want them to have the full retail pie. So
we're eventually going to release a trade probably when we get enough issues together. So anybody who's missing out on the bonus content from the Indiegogo version, that's our incentive now. But maybe a few years down the line, we'll have like an omnibus collection that'll have all that stuff in it.
That's what I'm talking about. That would go in my library that I'm working on. I like stuff like that. So what have you thought about the campaign so far, Mark? Has it gone well? Have you enjoyed it? Stressful? No. Are you glad it's almost over?
I'm not glad it's almost over because I've been enjoying it. But yeah, it's been going well. I mean, we made our funding goal. So the only stress is really when you're watching that line move across the page towards your funding goal. But once it passes that, then you just kind of like, oh, all right, just let it run its course now. And we've gotten, especially in the past few days, all the people who have kind of been holding off, I guess, on Friday for payday or just waiting until a little closer to the deadline. All those people who are waiting are now just getting the books. We've actually, I think, made several thousand in the past couple of days just from all the people who are waiting.
All right, Tim. So I am a huge fan of this series. I have this that I got through my LCS, and I got this through my LCS. People that didn't get to read the first set of Black Ops, is there an option for them to get those as well with the thing, or are they going to have to go through the retailer as well?
Oh, no, absolutely. What they can do is it's not visible on the screen, but when they check out, so just put in like the lowest tier item if you want and hit checkout, and you'll notice at the bottom that it'll offer one of 3 perks that you can add on. And one of the perks is actually the trade of Black Ops Volume 1, Buns of the Patriots. And so people don't have to be left out. And actually, because I don't actually look at the numbers just out of superstition, the watch pot never boils type thing. So Mark typically fills me in. But the last time I took a peek at it, we actually sold a lot of those trades, which was good. Don't get me wrong. And it's good because people are interested enough in this project that they want to get caught up by getting the first volume. So we're happy to provide that because I think when they compare the two, I think some people might be shocked because it's almost like 2 very different feels. Like Black Ops 1 almost feels like a pilot episode, and Black Ops 2 is kind of like a realization of what we want to do with it. So I hope that people enjoy both when they get a chance to take a look at them side by side.
All right, Tim, we got a question on the page from Midnight Cherry TV. Question for Mark and Tim. If Black Ops could have a crossover with the horror slasher series, what would it be and how?
Oh my gosh, we've actually I'm gonna answer first and then I'll let Mark, because Mark has a lot more knowledge of it. But it's it's interesting that he says this because this is something we actually planned for a future volume. Not so much a slasher, but we wanted him to eventually meet the Bunny Man. So like the Bunny Man is an actual, not like cryptid urban legend character around Virginia. It's supposed to be like a psycho killer around like a bridge. And they actually made a horror movie called The Bunny Man, and it's terrible. It's absolutely
like good, terrible, or bad, terrible.
It's
it's
bad.
Awful. Don't
like
yeah,
it's awful.
It's no redeeming qualities.
And like there's a scene. Okay, so there's this. I think it's been memed before. It's on YouTube, but it's a scene where the Bunny Man has a chainsaw, and there's a school bus full of children. And it's actually kind of cute because you can tell that they just like hired the neighborhood kids to go into school bus and told them, okay, just scream. And so all the kids are in the school bus, but they don't look scared. They're just like at the window and they're just screaming, but they're like happy because they're not like child actors. And so like the Bunny Man goes into the school bus and you just see like blood flying against the windshield and stuff. And I'm just like, it's like a school play almost. Like, okay, kids, we're gonna put on a horror play. It's called The Bunny Man. So Mark and I, we thought of like a potential scenario where we introduce the character in our own universe and see where that goes. So that's the idea that comes to mind.
I love stuff like that. That sounds great. I kind of want to watch these bad movies now, though.
Bunny Man,
The Bunny Man movie, you really don't. It's like Sci-Fi Channel original movie quality or Asylum movie quality, just without the humor of like Sharknado, where it knows it's bad. It's like it's trying to be a legit slasher flick. And oh man, so you know when you go to a Walmart and like Annabelle 2 has come out, right? And so Annabelle 2 is on the shelf, and like in this circle, this moat around it is like all these evil doll movies that just came out at the same time, and they're called like Anna Marie or Ashley or something like that. And they all
I remember when Pacific Rim came out. There was Atlantic Rim.
Yeah. So that's the quality of Bunny Man. It's pretty terrible.
All right, Mark. So did you have any plans for a slasher crossover? That can you expand on what Tim was talking about?
Well, Tim kind of stole my thunder because the Bunny Man thing was my idea because I'm from Virginia. Yeah. So the Bunny Man's our local legend up there. And so I know all about him. I've been to Bunny Man Bridge. You know, he's from so the legend started actually, the real life legend of Bunny Man started on Guinea Road, where a guy who was protesting in the 70s of Guinea being landscaped into the suburbs put on a rabbit suit and started attacking like workers with an axe. He didn't hurt anybody, but he's just trying to scare them off. And he was wearing the damn bunny suit, trying to make some sort of statement, but he never said anything. He just ran around screaming with an axe. And so that turned into the Bunny Man legend, which is about an escaped mental patient in Lorton, Virginia, who kidnaps a bunch of people, hacks them up, and then hangs their bodies from bridge under the train tracks, which is called Bunny Man Bridge now. But yeah, I wrote a whole treatment for a story for Black Ops to involve him, and a whole like background and story Bible installment for the character, and that's definitely one that I want to do in the future.
Or is that going to be like maybe like a Halloween time event or something like that? Are you guys going to try and do that, or is it whenever it's right you're going to do it? Whenever it's right, because we still have our story. So Black Ops Volume 1 is like Tim said, it's the pilot. It's the one that explains where USAGI came from. It's him going to North Korea to stop a nuclear strike, but it doesn't really feature any supporting characters or ancillary characters. So Black Ops 2, Hare Trigger, the one that's on Indiegogo right now, that one is kind of a soft reboot. You don't have to read the first volume if you don't want to, but it's the one that's introducing the ongoing narrative, the villains, the supporting cast, the ancillary cast, all that stuff. So we have to develop those elements first because we're still doing our world building, and then we can start doing, these kind of one-shot adventures and things like that later down the line. So the Bunny Man story is one that we're going to do a bit later after we've gotten our tracks laid. Nice. All right, so we have another question from Black Cat. How about a crossover with Bugs? Is that legal?
Actually, Bugs.
With the Looney Tunes Bugs?
Bugs is technically a hare and not a bunny, so it's a misnomer.
Wait, what? I mean, you called your book Hare Trigger.
Oh, that's true, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why it's called Hare Trigger.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil it. It's actually part of the plot. Well, not part of the plot. It's actually part of the exposition. But I actually like Bugs Bunny, but technically he's not a bunny. He's a hare, based on like how long his appendages are. So no, there's no crossover planned right now with Bugs. Now Warner Brothers, if you're listening and you hit us up, we might have to reconsider. But no future plan.
So a little this your way. Maybe there'll be a crossover.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, we have the bunny aficionado for certain. All right, we have another question. Have you guys considered doing a point-and-click game?
I actually really like point-and-click games. That's a good question.
I mean, it's on the table, but like depends on who hits.
That's the thing. We gotta find. We don't know how to make video games. We don't know how to code. How the hell do you do that? Or how do you do that?
Well, first you fail the journalists, and then you learn.
Yeah, so we got to get if anybody out there knows how to make video games, hey, hit us up. But point and click games, geez, Uninvited on NES, man, that was a fun game. I'd like to make something. Well, obviously it wouldn't work with USAGI necessarily as a horror point and click game. I'm not sure how a war point and click game would work, but if somebody could figure that out, hey, hit us up.
There you go. They're open to the idea, but there are no plans at this moment. All right, so is there anything else you guys want to say about Black Ops before we move on to our first subject?
No, we're just very happy for the people who have backed us. You're going to get an excellent project, excellent book. I am finalizing it this week. So part of me extending it, again, it's to help people who get their paychecks on Fridays, because I know it's ending at a weird time. It's supposed to be ending on a Monday. So it's to help people who are getting their paychecks, but also I'm more comfortable finalizing a campaign if I know that everything is finished. And so knowing that I only have like 3 more pages to letter, and Matt only has those pages to turn in. He says the colors are finished. He just needs to wait on them to arrive to his inbox. I would rather just postpone it and have the peace of mind of knowing that it's done before I finalize it. And that way we can literally once the funding gets to me, we send it to the printers, and I don't even care. I am going to do like 2 or 3 week shipping on them because I want this thing in people's hands a month early. So awesome. If we can get it in mid-October, then people can have them by November, even though we promised December.
All right, so Time Traveler Registered Trademark is saying he knows how to do point-and-click games and to hit him up. I don't know if how you guys want to meet up, but it sounds like he's your man if you want to do something like that.
Okay, cool. Hit us up on Twitter.
Bringing people together.
That's right.
USAGI and Maniac Mansion. I'd be all over that. Oh, by the way, one more thing. It's not crowdfunding, but Tim and I's previous crowdfunded book, Walmite, First Term Part 2. The retail edition is in stores now. So if you go and you hit up your local comic shop, you can find it for, I think it's $4.99. And, and it has a new cover that wasn't on the Indiegogo version. So if you got the Indiegogo version and you don't mind double dipping because you like the second cover, you can go to your local comic shop and get that now.
That is awesome. Also, if you're interested in the Indiegogo campaign for Black Ops, there's a link in the description below, and we'll probably throw one into the comments every little bit for anyone looking for it. I think we've covered that. We'll probably hit it up again because we're actually going to talk a little bit about some crowdfunding here at the end. But I think it's time to talk about something we haven't talked about in months, right, Jeremy? What's hot in anime and manga, buddy? What are you reading today?
First, I've been checking out that Vinland Saga just because Mikey buys manga on Twitter, won't shut up about it.
Oh, I like Mikey.
Oh, Mikey's great. If you guys aren't following Mikey buys manga on Twitter, you're doing yourself a disservice. But if we're going to talk about manga, I'm going to shoot up and hit up my book called Corpse Party. Have you guys read this book?
Wait, you're going to shoot up?
Well, yeah.
Have you seen The Joker? Did he tell you to do this?
Society taught me to read this book, guys.
I thought you were just doing heroin. Okay.
Sorry. This book is crazy good, guys. It's right in the season of Halloween, but it's almost October, a couple days here. Check it out. It's all about a bunch of school kids that get trapped inside a haunted house and they all die. Read it. It's great.
Wholesome.
Man, what was the name of it again? I'm writing it down.
It's called Corpse Party. It was originally I passed on this book because it's originally one of those RPG Maker games, and I was like, "Oh, this game's sucks." I always hate those games. And it's not until I know you gotta check it out. It's ridiculously gory, ridiculously just R-rated. It's really gross, and I love it. So check it out. Corpse Party. Read the book. Watch the anime. Don't play the game. The game's boring.
Midnight Cherry TV is throwing some shade at Jeremy.
Apparently
he's not as big a fan of manga as you are.
Those black and white guys, I tell you. And if you haven't got, get the Shonen app. It's only like, I think I pay like $25 a year for it. Check it out.
That's like the best deal for any type of comic things. Tim, what are you reading on manga nowadays? I know you kind of transitioned. You're a manga reader now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a lot of stuff. So the two that I keep up with consistently are, hey, Mark, I think you're scratching or something. I hear your mic.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go on.
It's that big beard of his.
He's rapping.
Yeah, he's rapping. I keep up with One Punch Man. I get every volume of that. Goblin Slayer as well. This sounds really dumb, but it's hilarious. I found this anime on Crunchyroll, and it's called Monthly Girls Nozaki Kun. And the first time my wife heard about it, she thought it was like hentai or something. I was like, no. It's about how manga is made by manga artists. So it's like it's almost like a meta story because it's a manga about making manga. And
isn't that one where they try to compete to see who gets an anime?
No, it's basically about it's about a team of high schoolers. There's a high school guy, and he is secretly a shonen artist. And it's funny because he's not a shonen guy. He's basically big, bulky, and awkward. And there's a girl who's his helper, and she has a crush on him, and he's oblivious to it. So it's all about how shonen manga is made. But it's basically featuring a cast of people who are not who you think of in terms of people who are appropriate for making shonen. So it's very lighthearted, it's very fun, it's very slice of life, and I'm enjoying that right now. My wife is watching Emma, which is like a Victorian anime, but we've been, I don't know, it seems like Crunchyroll, it's been a really great, we watch it more than we do Netflix now. But we're enjoying ourselves in terms of all the stuff that we're watching. Frankly, I've seen so much anime in the last 8 months that it's hard to keep track of. But it's interesting that, Wes, you brought up anime and manga, the topic for today, because about 5 minutes before we came on the air, our agent, he sent me a link, and I had a moment to skim through it, and it was interesting. It was basically a breakdown of anime versus comic readership in respective countries. And they were looking at like the numbers of Batman, and it was basically like 1.8% of the U.S. population reads Batman, and comparatively in circulation, One Piece in Japan has about 9.5% readership. So close to 10% of the Japanese population actually reads like its competitor. And so I think the point of the article was to be like, there's no reason why an American audience can't tap into the medium that's supposed to be specific to the country. Because
I can kind of add to that. I was just going to say I can add to that. At one time, the highest readership as far as an American comic in the United States was Amazing Spider-Man, and Amazing Spider-Man was at one point read. Now I've only got the numbers for children, those under 18, but it was estimated that 8.5% of children under 18 were reading Amazing Spider-Man. So,
wow,
so that's the largest in history. But yeah, just imagine, golly, could you imagine just nearly 10% now? How big that would be? That would be unbelievable.
We were talking to like SWC Revived last night, but I had been on a chat with them previously on their channel, and that's like the booger bear question is, why is it that manga is outselling? It seems to be rising in popularity. It's like a meteoric rise. It doesn't seem to end. But what is it about it that makes it so popular outside of the aesthetics? And he said, where they were saying that they think part of the reason is that manga looks like it was meant to be read. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And they say, look at the paper it's printed on, look at the fact that it's like a digest format. It's like you don't care how beat up it gets. You're not there to collect it. You're there to read it. That's the reason you buy it.
And that's a great point.
That.
Yeah, I mean, so comics used to be on like newsprint, and they were cheap because inflation. The comic did not cost the equivalent of $4 back in 1990 like it does now. With inflation, it's probably closer to it's like $1.05. It was something you were at the newsstand at the 7-Eleven, you bought a Slurpee and you bought a copy of X-Men, you rolled it up and you put it in your back pocket. And then when you got home or wherever, you unrolled it, you read it. And then when you were done reading it, you gave it to a friend or you just threw it in your closet or something. But now it's like every comic, is a $4 collector's item. It costs almost as much as a lunch to buy a single 20-page comic now. And then you got to put it in a Mylar bag and you got to hold on to it for its value, get it CGC slabbed and all that kind of stuff. And it's no longer disposable entertainment.
Well, that's actually interesting, but it is. A lot of my customers feel that way. It's the reason why that they've that so many, well, not all of them, but so many of them have drifted over to Alterna as well, because pulp comics less expensive. But I have some customers that buy them because of their fancier quality now, the higher quality. So I don't know. It's
absolutely. I mean, we're guilty of it. All of our books are premium in terms of how much money we put into the quality of the binding and stuff.
It's the thing. That's what the market, I guess, right now for comics wants. But I think there needs to be separate editions for comics. There needs to be like how Archie back in the 90s had newsstand editions and boutique editions of like Ninja Turtles, the movie adaptation. There's a newsstand edition that was on pulp paper, and it was out in 7-Elevens, and you bought it for like $1. And you read it that way, and that's the one you could beat up. And then they had, the premium editions, which you got from like comic shops, the ones that were sold direct to market. And those would be like $3. They'd have better binding, they'd have better paper quality, they'd have different coloring. So instead of the flat colors, they would, by like Barry Grossman, they would have nicer colors by Steve Levine or someone. And it was a bit more lavish, but you're getting more for your money on that one. I kind of think comics need to do that. They need to have their direct market editions of Spider-Man or Batman that's you pay the premium on, and then they have their newsstand editions that you pay $1 for, as an impulse item at the register when you buy a candy bar.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah,
and it shouldn't be all comics either. It should be like Amazing Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, X-Men. Your titles like that, maybe 8 of them. Those are the gateway drugs. Yeah. When someone reads a book and they're like, "This is the best comic I've ever read," and you're like, "Well, for $3 more, I can go to the comic shop and get the good version, right? That I want to collect."
Exactly.
Oh, wait, look at all these extra books. Oh, I like Superman. There's another line of Superman comics I didn't even know about. Oh, I remember that writer. Let me go check that one out.
One incredibly popular thing there has been True Believers. I mean, I order True Believers by the gross. I just get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies of them in. And they sell. I mean, it's unbelievable how well they sell. Because it's like they'll say, "Oh, it came out in True Believers," and they're already buying their $35, $40, $50 worth of books that week. And what's $3 or $4 extra, and they get 3 or 4 whole books. So
I've been saying for years they should reprint the old books in newsprint and have them compete against the modern stuff.
Well, they
kind of are.
They're kind of doing that now. That makes me really happy. I've been picking up a lot of old Batmans.
The facsimile editions from DC are on like newsprint.
Yeah, I have a couple.
They're way better. I love those. Those are better than anything that they're putting out nowadays, in my opinion.
I just feel to see that, grab it. I don't even care what issue. Just grab it. I don't care. It's $1.
I mean, you see that Denny O'Neil, like Neil Adams cover of Batman with Ra's al Ghul, having their sword fight. You could get that, or you could get the modern Batman comic, and there's no competition. You're like, I want that one. I mean, so when I buy Marvel or DC, I haven't bought like a new issue of a Marvel or DC comic, but I still buy their reprints, their trades. Like I picked up Swamp Thing, the Bronze Age, that has all those Bernie Wrightson. Then it's just fantastic. I've read it before. This is my 3rd time buying the Bernie Wrightson run of Swamp Thing in trade, because every time they re-release it, they do it a little bit better and add a few more issues. But I still buy them, but I still buy Marvel and DC comics, but I buy their stuff from 20, 30 years ago.
Yep. And me personally, when I buy the True Believers, once I'm done with them, I take them down to my kid's school and I give them to his classmates. Because I don't care. And they're all trying to learn how to read right now. I mean, I sit every night with my son. We sit down and read. Right now, we're reading Superman. So I give it to them, take it home.
The irony is that some of those True Believers have actually the first print of the True Believers Spider-Man, maybe Spider-Man 300. It's like, I think the last few that I've had in sell for like $25 or $30.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts because the True Believers are getting to be valuable. It's like, whoa.
Well, it's like free comic book day issues. If you go after free comic book day, if you go on eBay to find it, it's like $10 for the free comic book day Ninja Turtles or whatever. But it was free. Why are you charging $10 for it now? But yeah, it's these things.
Well, it wasn't free. That's like one of the misnomers. The shop still pays for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, shops, you guys got to pay for them. Yeah, I mean, for the consumers though, you go and you pick it up. And I like free comic book day, and that's the only time though I really see a lot of kids in the store. I mean, every time I go to the local shop, I do see some kids, but the only time I see throngs of children is on free comic book day. But
now,
they're there. Yeah.
This last time, what I did was because the free comics are so expensive now on Free Comic Book Day because it's ridiculous. But what I did was instead I ordered almost a half a pallet of True Believers, and I gave those out for Free Comic Book Day instead of the supposed free comics, and it was about the same price.
Mm-hmm.
So. It wasn't that much more. It was like,
how are you gonna get that reprint of Spawn #1? Come on, man.
But yeah, it's pretty sweet. And I think that at some point, Marvel and DC are going to really have to go that route again. At least to an extent, maybe more like what you were talking about as far as with the 7-Elevens, or gas stations or something like that. And they're going to have a lower cost option if they're ever going to expand the industry again. Either that or they'll just let it die. But
yeah, I mean,
if they're going to grow it again, they're going to have to go that route.
Well,
hold on, guys. Oh, yeah. I just want to say what's up to Nola Nerd, who dat. Real Comic Stacks is in the chats right now. He has an amazing YouTube channel. You should definitely subscribe and go check out his videos.
He's a good guy.
I think that was it. Sorry, Pele. Or sorry, Mark.
Yeah, there's 2 Pele's in here, isn't there?
Yeah, confusing me.
There is?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to. I can't remember which one of you said it a few minutes ago, but it was my experience as a kid. Was I went to 7-Eleven and I bought whatever Uncanny or regular X-Men comic was on the rack. But obviously the comic rack at the 7-Eleven didn't have all the comics available. There was a comic shop, but it was like 20 miles away, and we would go there sometimes. But I remember I wanted to go there to see the other X-Men books that I read about in Wizard Magazine that the stands didn't have. And that's what got me to go to the comic shop, or to beg my parents to take me to the comic shop at every opportunity, was to get all those other books that couldn't be stocked at the supermarket. And that needs to kind of come back, like you said. Have the lower cost option out there is almost like a cheap sample for people to get when they're or kids to get when they're at CVS or something, and then that will bring them into the shop where they can get everything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, they could do it. They could,
like that's what Alterna's trying to do, but no one wants to buy them, right?
Yeah,
everybody try to do the whole Toys R Us, and Toys R Us obviously went under.
Well, those I don't know about that, but I can get in. I get in 2 or 3 display boxes from Alterna a month, and they're all gone by the time the next shipment comes in. So they sell really, really well. It's the main problem that I have with Alterna is just the quality of titles is a little sketch. Sometimes it's like, it's like this is all right, but it's not. It's not even upper tier indie quality sometimes, but he does a really good job as far as the art direction and everything. So that makes up for some of it. But yeah, I think that I don't know how much politics have hurt as far as getting writers, but I do believe that he's on the right track. He's hitting the right angles. It's just getting that penetration into certain markets and getting acceptability, you know, as far as comics being a you know, countertop type of experience again, like they were back in the, you know, back before the 90s.
Mm-hmm. That's part about what FF2 just said, is if you actually have the Shonen Jump app, you can read all that stuff from the start to the very beginning for basically for free. Get the Shonen app, guys. My Hero, Vinland Saga, Dr. Stone, all great stuff.
Yeah, speaking of FF2, he's trying to catch up on some manga. My personal was Promised Neverland. I got up to about volume 6 or 7, and then I accidentally fell off because I have so many comics I have to read. Jeremy, how is Promised Neverland? Are you still on that one?
I stopped because I want to watch the anime now. I think there's one whole season. So, but yeah, I got about to where you're about to. It's really good, really, really dark, really creepy.
The creepiest.
It's really cool. I know that stuff really creeps me out, so I guess I really get attracted to that kind of stuff. But Promised Neverland is amazing. What a messed up scenario. What a messed up scenario. What kind of imagination is that? You're spoil it a little bit. You're harvesting kid bodies for food.
Oh, man. Tim, have you ever read Promised Neverland?
I have not, but we were actually talking about it last night because everyone's been recommending it. Some people say it's really dark.
Oh, it's really dark.
I don't necessarily shy away from it. It's not my cup of tea. I like very lighthearted, like optimistic stuff. So I might have to give it a go around at some point.
So one of the big things that people talk about Shonen Jump, but one of the places I know you're talking about the Crunchyroll app, but there's a ton of anime based on these books that's on Netflix right now, and most people just consider that like free entertainment at this point. You have your Netflix account. So what kind of anime do you think is on Netflix that's worth checking out, Tim, or did you run through it all?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot. My number one recommendation, and I know Mark is going to back me up on this one, is Little Witch Academia. That is amazing. It's a great anime for everyone. It looks like it's a girls' anime or a kids' anime, and it's not. Cute. Yeah. It's actually, I think that's the template of how you write girls, and I tell this to John Delarose all the time. I will not read, and I don't care who you are. If you tell me that your book is about a strong, independent woman, it's a pass. It's a hard pass. No. And he was like, wait, why? And I said, because that should already be ingrained in your story. That should not be a selling point. You're not telling me anything. And so when I try to describe Little Witch Academia to people, I'm like, these are like, they act like real girls. They act like girls you and I would know. Of course, they're smaller because they're in like a high school, but they're cute, and they each have their personalities, and they have kind of the tropes that girls go through in school. You have your cliques, you have the mean girls, you have dumb girls too, you have the weird girl. But it's the idea that you can watch it, and it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. You're gonna find it entertaining. And it's rare for an anime because one thing that Mark and I had been talking about was that Trigger. There's a bunch of Westaboos in there. Like they look at Western stuff and they get inspired by it. And so I think that Little Witch Academia is a good bridging the gap for people who are hesitant to check out anime. It was actually my wife's intro anime, so she'd never seen anime before until she saw that, and she loves it. She's like, "Holy cow! Like this is so good."
I'm glad you said that. Did you watch the anime or did you watch the movies first?
All of them. I
that first movie is my favorite, and that got me hooked.
Yes, and I saw the series first, and then I saw the 2 animated movies. But they're all fantastic. But we're always kind of sad to hear that a lot of people don't even know about it. And I'm like, oh well, kind of makes sense because it's only on Netflix right now. But if you do have Netflix, please make sure to check it out. It is friendly. There's no politics in it. There's no ham-fisted SJW stuff in it.
Animation is fantastic.
It has a good moral to it. It's multi-layered. Animation is beautiful. Just make sure to check that one out. And another one too, just so many on Netflix that are actually pretty good. One Punch Man obviously is on there. And another one that was Violet Evergarden is really good, but that's a tearjerker. So if you're not in a happy mood, you might not want to watch that one either. But yeah, those are three of the recent ones that come to mind as far as
Silent Voice is also on Netflix. Me and Shelby watched that. That's a beautiful movie. Everyone should check that one out too. It's all about a deaf girl that friends a guy that was mean to her in elementary school, and they fell in love. Good movie. I believe the studio that made that was that one that got
Nicholas Sparks.
It's a Nicholas Sparks book.
Yeah.
What was that one studio? There's that one animation studio that had a big catastrophic fire. A lot of people were passed away. Can't remember what that studio was called. I'll look it up.
Oh, the one
Kyoani.
Yeah, that was the one. The Sound of Voice is amazing. I'd recommend that one too. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I wish that I could get into anime. There's something kind of barrier there that a lot of it's like I don't get it, or I don't. It's not even the real fact that I don't get it. It's just that it doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't impact me. I mean, when I was younger, I watched anime, and I was really into like the Vampire Hunter D. I was into the original Akira, Ghost in the Shell, and Cowboy Bebop was really good.
Oh, yeah.
But it just seems like those types of anime really aren't the thing anymore. People are more into more like the comedy or the the slice of life type of anime, and I like the gritty, violent, more action anime, and it doesn't seem like there's very many more of those anymore.
All right, Mark, we got a question from the chats for you. Mr. Mark, have you read Batman TMNT by James Tynion? It was awesome.
So yeah, I've read Volume 1 and Volume 2. I've been collecting Volume 3, and I'm gonna read that one when all the issues are together, just because it's one of those stories that feels like they wrote one big story and then cut it up into 6 pieces so it reads better all at once. But yeah, the first volume was great, and I liked the animated film adaptation. I thought the animated film that DC came out with was it actually
Batman Cowabunga. Recommend it.
Yeah, it was so the first volume, it's a very easy read, so you don't have to be reading New 52 Batman, and you don't have to be reading IDW TMNT because it's non-canon to both. It just kind of takes ideas from both of those versions of Batman and the Turtles, and then you can just kind of jump into it. So whether you've been reading those comics or not, you can pick up Volume 1, and there's no barrier whatsoever. And the animated film took that basic storyline, but I'm not going to say it fixed the things it did wrong, but it kind of saw the ideas it overlooked or didn't have the space to explore, and did more with them, like the mutated Arkham, like Batman villains. In the comic,
that was wild.
Oh yeah, because in the comic they're in there, but only for kind of a small part. But the movie gives them a much more expanded role and has more fun with the idea. Volume 2, I didn't. Yeah, Volume 2 I didn't care for very much. The one with Bane. That one didn't do it for me. I thought that one. It
was too much of a retread of the first story.
It was, and also it brought in a lot of stuff from like the '80s cartoon of Ninja Turtles, which didn't fit with, because the first volume was very much these are the IDW Turtles, but it's just non-canon. The second one's like it's the IDW Turtles, but now they have the party wagon and the blimp, and they're saying cowabunga and all this weird stuff. It didn't really work for me. I could give it another go. But also with Volume 2, with the bigger problem with Volume 2 is that they brought in a second writer just to write the dialogue, and when your whole job is to write dialogue and nothing else, I mean, you're going to write dialogue. So characters talk way too much in that comic, and they talk in this really flowery exposition. Like this guy, like, "Whoa, they paid me $100 to write dialogue, so I'm just going to write freaking sonnets here." And
you got this page of, I mean, you've got literally a paragraph of dialogue between punches. Sometimes it's like, and it's oh god, it's like Mark Waid syndrome. It's like, shut up, I mean,
it's not cute like when you're going back and reading a Silver Age comic where everybody talks so much. That's just that's kind of the charm of those older comics, and even Chris Claremont comics. Like that's what you get when you read a Chris Claremont comic. You're used to it, but the TMNT Batman 2 just overdid it. And that's actually, so when I was writing with Tim on Black Ops, he asked to tell me to abbreviate, Mark, because it is easy to write too much dialogue. At least when you're a writer and your job is to write, then you want to write. But for comics, there's just not that much space. And it is a visual medium. You can't let your word bubbles cover up the art. So
you have to let the artists do some of the work too,
What were you saying, Doc?
But Doc is gone.
Oh, I think it was talking. Oh, the it's like Tim was talking about before we went live, the pictograms that the bunny talks in, and I just think that's ingenious. That's just really it's just so cool, that his language is little pictograms, and
yeah, that was kind of something we had to come up with because we have a silent character and we're going to introduce more Black Ops agents who are animals, and none of them can talk. And in the first volume, there's a military dossier narration that's explaining things as it goes along in the story. But we can't do that forever because it becomes, tiresome to be reading everything in this sterile military jargon and have a character who can't emote beyond his visuals and only in pantomime. So adding this universal language, which is, pictograms of animals talking, quote unquote, to each other, it creates this idea that the animals can converse, but it's in a method that's not necessarily language as we understand it. But it can be cute and it can allow for visual jokes. And so Tim and I have fun coming up with the pictograms. And if a kid, ever finds our comic and can read them, they'll interpret those as emojis. And kids understand emojis. It's almost like a foreign language that they just pick up and read. So it's something that they can get too.
So, Mark, back on the Batman TMNT. So you haven't read any of the third volume?
Nope, I'm waiting for it to finish up. It's a 6-issue miniseries, right?
Yeah. Have you heard the premise?
No, actually, I have my stack of unread issues right here. I think they're up through issue 4 right now. And
issue 5.
Oh, issue 5. Okay, I got to pick that up at the shop today if I can. I know that it's got this. Obviously, I'm looking at the comic, and it's got. I think it's the Shredder dressed as the Joker, or something like that. Yeah,
it's amazing. So the first one is really good. And the second one was too much of a retread. It wasn't very fun. And you were right about the dialogue. But the third one, Tinian like really brought it. So he starts playing, because one of the big things in the DC is the multiverse. And then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have their own multiverse. And this book crosses over the two multiverses.
It's funny you mentioned that
two
because
primes, right? What creates two prime worlds? One,
yeah. So there's like amalgamations of, Batman's not just Batman. He's got a little bit of Turtles to him. The Turtles aren't just the Turtles. They have some of the Robins into them and stuff like that. And it's awesome.
So that one and Shredder in Hell, which is the one that I'm also waiting to read in one big go. Those are the two big ones that I can't wait until the minis are finished because I pick them up every month, or Shredder in Hell every 2 months when it comes out. I don't know, that thing's kind of been delayed, but I'm gonna dive into those once they're all out so I can read them in one big pile. But it's funny you mentioned the multiverses because last night I was bored, so I watched Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, and I know that a lot of people out there hate Teen Titans Go. I don't have the I don't have that ardor for it that a lot of people do. But I watched that movie last night, and it's all about the different versions of Teen Titans meeting up, and it's a carbon copy almost exactly of Turtles Forever, the TV movie from like 2009. Was, all the different turtles from the 80s cartoon, the 2000s cartoon. From the Mirage comics, all of them meeting up and having this big multiversal adventure. That's what Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans is. But they took that plot and they just crossed out all the proper nouns and replaced it with Teen Titans characters. They have the same jokes for a lot of the scenes in there. It's pretty obvious, but it's a pretty fun movie for what it is. I think people who aren't completely abandoned of Teen Titans Go and can like a little bit of it, and they'll like the movie.
So yeah, Ben, I'm telling you right now, just from what I'm hearing you saying, you're gonna absolutely love it. Like I think it's the last 3 pages of the first issue. You're gonna be smiling so hard.
I hope so.
Week, man. Shout out to you, Wes.
I can't believe he did this.
Because you and Bats got me into that. I'm really happy about that.
And then also Shredder in Hell is one of the most beautifully illustrated comics of the year. It's amazing.
So Mateus Santaloco. So when I wanted to get Tim, and Tim can back me up on this, I wanted to sell him on the IDW Ninja Turtles comic, but I didn't want to start him at issue number 1 because the first story arc of the IDW series it's not very good. It's actually kind of boring. Yeah. So what I did was I gave him Secret History of the Foot Clan. And
that's good.
Yeah, read it. And so now Tim reads every Christmas. I get him one of those IDW hardcover collections, that has all the issues in a narrative reading order. I get him one of those, and he reads those every year, so he keeps up with IDW as well. But Mateus is the one who sells the IDW comic to newcomers. I think he does the best art in that series.
Oh, and he takes it up like 3 notches for Shredder in Hell. I don't want to sell Freddie Williams short because his illustrations for Batman.
Oh yeah,
like, why is that man how he doesn't have his own like Nightwing series or something cool like that?
Well, let me ask you, because I want to pick up the He-Man Thundercats miniseries he did. Is that any good? Have any of you read it?
I read the He-Man the Masters of the Universe versus Injustice, and that one's great.
Did he do that one too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The art is very good. I think where it falls a bit is the plot and the narrative. The narration is not great, but visually it's very appealing.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's how I felt about Batman TMNT 2. I did not like the story or the dialogue very much, but I really liked his art and his colorist that he has. I think it's James Caldwell. I got to look at the credit real quick, but he's married. He's like partnered.
Caldwell.
Oh yeah, Caldwell. Yeah. So he's partnered with an excellent colorist, and he does a bunch of little nuances. Like he gives kind of like a white aura around characters, so they stand out from the backgrounds, which are very heavily detailed. He has that. Tim is the artist. He could tell me what it's called, but he has that wash color effect on them that just they go together so well. It's kind of like Dan Schoening and Jose Luis Delgado on the IDW Ghostbusters comic. It's an artist colorist pair who are perfect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is Tim still here?
Yeah,
yeah. I've been listening.
You want to chime in on that? What's the artist interpretation of that?
I think he nailed it. It's just an artist wash. It looks like watercolor essentially.
But yeah, the art in Batman TMNT is phenomenal, and like I said, the art in Masters of the Universe versus Injustice is just as good. And if you like He-Man, you don't even have to like Injustice. The He-Man stuff itself is awesome. Most of it's an attorney anyway. So, all right. So we want to talk any more about manga before we head full into TMNT?
Let's do it. Let's go into TMNT.
All right. Let's do the TMNT. So Mark, you're like a TMNT historian, right?
Yeah. So some people know me for Well, so some people know me for the comic. Not enough people know me for the comics that I write with Tim and other people, and the novels that I write. Some people know me for all the horror movie chatter I do on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But I think most people, if they know anything that I've done, it's my website, TMNT Entity, which unfortunately, because I started having to spend all my free time writing comics and books, I haven't updated the site in like a year. I kind of had to put it in mothballs. But it's an archive site that has summaries, reviews, articles on every issue of every Ninja Turtles comic published ever up through August of last year. So it's a pretty massive site. I worked on it for 10 years before I had to put it on hold. So it'll take you a few days to get through all, but it's all cataloged and organized, so it's very easy to read. But yeah, I'm a bit of a Ninja Turtles gangsta myself. Thank you.
So Mark, how many different iterations in comic book form have there been of the Turtles? I know there's the original from Mirage, there's the IDW one, which is really weird, that's pretty divisive. And I know you got IDW. Is there one or two more iterations in there as well?
Oh, so it's funny you should say that. There is even within Mirage, there are different iterations because there's the Mirage Turtles, the canon Turtles. There's 4 volumes of the Mirage series plus like 2 volumes of Tales and all the miniseries. But when a lot of people go back and read the original Mirage Volume 1 of Ninja Turtles, the one that came out in the 80s, they kind of get thrown off because very quickly, as soon as you get to, I think, issue 18, they start bringing in guest artists and doing non-canon stories. And they get to a whole big string of those from the 20s through the 40s of that series, where it's just, you never know when you pick up an issue if it's going to be one that continues the main storyline or if it's going to be one by a guest artist who's off doing something really crazy and wacky in Mad Magazine style. Mm-hmm. So it was very much, when the Mirage comic is tough to get into, you can read the selections, like the Ultimate collections that IDW puts out, that takes all the canon stories and just publishes those together in a narrative order. But if you're just picking up singles, like loose issues from the long box, it gets weird. You're like, what is going on? Because back
that's
then
where your website comes in handy, right?
Yeah, and so I kind of try to help people figure out the reading order. I have this monstrous, omnibus chronological timeline, which I don't recommend as the reading order necessarily. It was just a project to put everything in a chronological order. But the Mirage series is not exactly user-friendly, but the stories, there are a lot of really good stories in there. But, I mean, if you're talking about different versions of Ninja Turtles, oh, man, there's the Archie series, which also had some non-canon stuff. There's the Dreamwave series, which was a tie-in with the 2003 cartoon. It's not very good. So the Image series from the 90s, though, by Frank Fosco, is and it's really good. And it was a continuation of the Mirage series when it was published. But after it got canceled, Peter Laird decided that it didn't count anymore. And so Volume 3 by Image is non-canon, even though it's a continuation of the Mirage series. And Volume 4 by Laird replaces Volume 3. And that's what I'm talking about, where it gets really confusing as to what counts and what doesn't anymore. So it's not exactly intuitive. And yeah, there's the IDW series, but even IDW, you've got something like the Batman TMNT comics, which are like the IDW Turtles, but a separate continuity, a separate characters entirely. And then you get into really weird stuff, like you get into the Division Comics Turtles from Mexico, and the Dengeki Manga Turtles from Japan. And I just found out that there was a whole string of Italian Ninja Turtles comics that I never knew existed. And so I've been trying to dig up info on those, and that's a whole separate beast.
Yeah, and Eastman really made bank on that series. Good job, bro.
Yeah, there's more turtle comics than even I know about, because once you start getting into the different language ones, it's all over. Turtle Mania was huge in the 80s and 90s, and it was global. Like I've tracked down a lot of the Ninja Turtles manga, and I even did scanlations. You can go to my website, and there are links to this Ninja Turtles manga that I scanlated with the optical internet translation gang who did all the photo editing after I did my translation scripts. And the scans were provided by Adam Winter, who's a friend of mine who's a collector. And there's a lot of manga. Some of it gets really weird, and some of it gets really PG-13, I guess. It's very Japanese. Like Irma in one issue. So Irma from the cartoons, right? The frumpy girl with glasses. Yeah.
The dork.
Yeah, the dork. But yeah, there's weird fan service in those mangas where Irma gets a cursed sword. And for some reason, the sword, when she picks it up, all of her clothes come off. It's just like that. It's very strange stuff.
When I'm reading a book about turtles, I want some fan service.
So Mark, we have a question from the viewers. Did you talk about the TMNT Alien cartoon? Do you know what he's talking about?
The TMNT Alien cartoon. Is he talking about I'm not sure. He's talking about the 2012, the Nickelodeon one with the Utroms or the Krang in them, or?
All right, we're gonna have to get some clarification. I don't know. Yeah. I thought maybe there was a TMNT Alien franchise crossover.
Yeah, when you say Alien, I almost think of
yeah. Well, Eastman and Laird did some crossover art in the 80s that gets I think they did 2 pieces of it that kind of gets shared around, but it's it's non-legit. It was just kind of like fan art that they did and posted in magazines.
So there's literally almost infinite different iterations of Turtles.
I never thought there ever was.
So which series do you think is the best? Like if people are like, I want to get on Turtles, I want to read the best Turtles. You're a Turtle historian. Which one is the best? Is it IDW? Is it original Mirage?
It is tough to say, because it's like, how do I separate my favorite from what I think is, objectively the best? I mean, my favorite's the Mirage series. I like the fact that it's all over the place and kind of never know what you're going to get, because it's very free form and anything goes. So just creators like Eastman and Laird, just like they said, a creator would come and say, hey, I want to do a Ninja Turtle comic. And they say, okay, do your own thing, however you want to do this comic. And so it's very freewheeling. I know that doesn't appeal to a lot of people, though. The base story, if you just pick up those Ultimate collections, I think people would really like those because that's the foundational stories you've seen retold a million times in Ninja Turtles. That's their origin story. They fight the Mousers and Baxter Stockman and meet April. They kill the Shredder, but the Shredder comes back and he attacks them in the apartment and beats the crap out of Leonardo. So they all have to go off to Northampton to chill out for a while. But then they make their big comeback to New York and they kill the Shredder again. But then that starts a gang war, and then there's the City at War storyline. Like all of the essential Ninja Turtle storylines that you keep seeing told over and over again are in those issues, and they're very good. They're extremely good. But I think just for people who are looking for something a bit more modern and something that incorporates the aspects of the Turtles that everybody recognizes, because face the facts, you know, they don't say cowabunga and they don't eat pizza. They don't have rainbow bandanas in the Mirage series. So I think the most fan-friendly comic really is the IDW comic, because that incorporates aspects of every incarnation of the Ninja Turtles, the Mirage comics, the 80s cartoon, the 2000s cartoon, and even the current Nickelodeon cartoon, or the one that just ended a couple of years ago. And so it's kind of an ultimate Ninja Turtles, where if there's something you like about the Turtles from whatever version you grew up with, you're going to find a piece of it in that book. And if you pick up those hardcover IDW collections, they're all in a narrative reading order where they take the one-shots and miniseries and they put them in where they fit in with the ongoing. So it's all a very intuitive read. And so I would recommend that.
I'm just looking on Amazon right now. There's like a bunch of volumes for that Ultimate Collections. It's like, whoa, volume 7 all the way up, and there's like black and white editions. And
so that IDW, one thing they really suck at is they really suck at finding trades for them in any sort of intuitive purchasing experience. So it's like,
I think I'm just going to stick with anything with Eastman covers on it. Like, okay, that's good. Eastman. Let's go stick with that.
So they've got these ones. It's called TMNT Color Classics, and it's the Mirage series. Yeah, it's the Mirage series, but recolored, which I wouldn't recommend because the colors aren't very good. But then they've got TMNT Classics, which is the non-canon Mirage stories. And there's nothing that really tells you that Color Classics and TMNT Classics are what the difference between them is. So you can buy one volume, and then they've got TMNT The Works, and TMNT The Works comes in like those covers that look like pizza boxes, but that's just the Color Classics volumes, several of them squished together into an omnibus. So it's the same stuff, but you don't know that. And then they've got different versions of the Ultimate collections, you know, that are soft cover, hard cover. But those are also the same issues that are in the Works and that are in Color Classics, but just in black and white. But you don't know that, and so you can buy the same material accidentally like 4 or 5 times if you're.
Would you recommend using your website to know which ones to buy?
I would tell anybody who wants to visit my website to visit my website whenever they feel like it.
This is very confusing, yeah.
Yeah, and so they put out, you know, the trade collections of like every time they do 4 or 5 issues of the ongoing, you know, a storyline, they put it in a trade, you know, up to like volume 17 or 19 now probably. But then they have all their mini series like, you know, Bebop and Rocksteady Destroy Everything or Secret History of the Foot Clan, and you can get those and TMNT Universe, which is their tie-in ongoing that ended like a year ago, and you can get those, but there's nothing that tells you how those fit in with the ongoing. So it's all very confusing, and that's why, you know, I made an online reading order. But the best way to read that book is to pick up the hardcovers that are called TMNT, the IDW collection, volumes. I think they're up to like volume 9 now. And it's all the IDW canon stories slipped into where they fit into a chronological sequence. So you can just read volume 1 through volume 9 and get the whole story, you know, the way it's meant to be read without having to look anything up and do any research.
That kind of answers FF2 here, because he's like, I don't know where to start.
I know, they don't make it easy.
I know, that was my thing, because I know Wes and Bats from another stream were telling me I just started buying anything with turtles on it. Like, I don't know where to start. Screw it. I'm just getting, if it has a turtle on it, buy it.
I know.
I'll figure it out.
But it's one of those things. It's funny because in the mid 2000s, when Ninja Turtles was still owned by Mirage and by Peter Laird, he didn't put any material out in trade because they were a small press organization and they couldn't handle unsold copies in overstock being sent back to them. So they just like, okay, well, we just aren't going to do any trade paperbacks or any reprints. So there's like a 15, close to 20-year period where there was a complete drought of Ninja Turtles comics on the shelf, other than the direct market floppies from Mirage. You couldn't get a trade paperback of the classic stories. Now we're almost at a point of oversaturation where IDW just keeps taking this material and repackaging it and putting it out, and with a different title, but it's the same material. And now there's so much of it, you don't know where to start, and it's overwhelming. And so people just aren't bothering. It's like the complete reversal of that problem with the same outcome.
Yeah, I was never much of a Turtles guy growing up, except for, look, I was 8 when the cartoon was on in the 80s, or wait, was it the 80s? When the hell did
1987 was when the series started. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was like 7 or 8. So other than my only experience with Turtles was like the cartoon and the freaking toys. So I'm actually sitting here at my desk right now, and I have all 4 of the Turtles, the toys, sitting right on the bookshelf above me. And so, like, anytime people start bringing up all the stuff, like, they don't eat pizza, they don't have, the rainbow
bandanas,
I'm sitting there going, wait, what? I know. I know F all about the Turtles. So just hearing you guys talk, that's why I'm just sitting here silently, because I'm like,
well, it is
I know
kind
a
of
great website now where you can learn more.
I know, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to, because especially it was right after my 10th anniversary on that site that I started getting all these paying writing gigs, and paying writing gigs take precedent over just reviewing comics for fun. So I didn't really want to put this site on moratorium. I have this huge stack of Turtle comics that have all come out since 2018, because I keep buying them, because someday I'm going to get back to the site when I have free time, and I'm going to catch up on it someday. But all the material there up through 2018 is all still pretty solid for people who want to use it. But it's funny you mentioned that the changes, obviously, between the Mirage TMNT and what people recognize as TMNT from the cartoon, and especially the live-action movies from the 90s. So when they go back and they read the Mirage comics, and they all have red bandanas, and they don't eat pizza, they don't say cowabunga, they're chopping people's faces off, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's all very confusing. I had that same problem, though, with the Tick. Yeah. I got into the Tick from, the cartoon that was on Fox Kids in the 90s, and I really, really liked that show. I still like that show. It's very funny. And I watched the Patrick Warburton live-action series that lasted, 1 season, but it was still pretty good. And it had, these characters, the supporting cast in it of characters like Deflator Mouse and American Maid and Sewer Urchin, these really funny, great characters that help make that show. But then I go back and I decided to pick up a collection of Bill Edlund, his Tick comics, the original source material. And I was reading those, and none of those characters are in the comic, because they were all created for the TV shows. And it felt off. It felt like something was missing. Like, half the cast that I love is not here in this book. And the book was still good. Bill Edlund's Tick comics are great. It always felt like something was missing, because the version I was accustomed to had all those great characters in it.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Like, at any time, I never really got into the Tick, and I just recall it's from I remember the same cartoon. I think I was like, 12, 13, probably like 12 whenever it was on, and it was fun. You'd have, like, what was it? What was the guy with the chair for a head? Oh,
Chairface Chippendale, yeah.
Yeah. And I have no idea whether or not any of these characters actually were from the comics at that point. And that's kind of there's that, do you think it ever harms properties when they're more mainstream counterpart versions? Like,
I think sometimes the big one that absolutely first comes to mind is The Mask, because the Mask movie with Jim Carrey overwrote the original Dark Horse comics by Arcudi and Doug Mank, I think, is the artist. And those comics, they have the same story. A lot of the scenes that are in the comics happened in the movie, but in a gruesome horror movie tone. The movie is like its whole distinct animal, but the whole smoking, zoot suits, and somebody stop me, that became so prevalent and so popular because of the Jim Carrey movie and the cartoon series that the Dark Horse comic just changed within its own continuity after Arcudi and Mank left and new writers came in. And they decided, okay, well, the comic is now going to be more like the movie and the cartoon. And he's called Big Head in the comics, not The Mask. And Big Head is going to start acting like Jim Carrey and talking like Jim Carrey and dressing like Jim Carrey. And it had a negative impact on those original comics because it was trying to be more mainstream from what people recognize of the Mask property.
I was just going to say Harley Quinn has definitely changed dramatically because of how popular she is. Yeah,
she needs to go away. She needs to go away.
Bring back the Jester and stop making comics.
Yeah. So we do have a question from the viewers. You have a favorite TMNT show in mind? Mine is 2012. Of course, mine is the 1987 one that blew up when I was a kid and ended up leading into the I don't know if it's 87. Was it the 90s? It turned into the movies.
Oh yeah, the 87 to 95, I think, is how long I went to.
Yeah, the 80s series ran until 96. It had 10 seasons. Yeah. But Tim, what's your favorite Ninja Turtle cartoon?
I mean, I didn't even keep up with the 2012 series. I know basically the original one from the 80s, but if people haven't seen it, you need to see TMNT Forever, the crossover between basically all permutations of the Ninja Turtles up until a point. That's a great movie to watch. That's like the best of both worlds. No pun intended, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, so my favorite animated series of Ninja Turtles is the 2003 one because that's the one that was overseen by Peter Laird. So it's basically the Mirage Comics light. It actually feels more like the live-action movies, which were the Mirage Comics toned down with some compromises for kids, having the rainbow bandanas and stuff. But it's very authentic as much as it can be to the original comics, and it has a very solid narrative from season 3 through season 4. It gets a little dicey after that because there's Playmates, the toy company, kind of had more of a hand from season 5, 6, and 7. But seasons 1 through 4 are fantastic. That's where you get Shredder, and yes, he is an Utrom, like Krang, kind of. He's a little pink alien in the stomach of a robot body. But they work it into the mythology of their version of the Turtles so well, you get over it pretty quickly. And it's the show that brings in characters like Hun and especially Agent Bishop, who are now like mainstream Turtle characters who are in every version of the brand. They're introduced in that one. And it's also the first series to really go into Karai being Shredder's daughter. She wasn't Shredder's daughter in the comics. She was actually Shredder's boss, and they're unrelated. But this is the one that brings in the idea of her being his daughter, which has now become like the canon version of Karai that you see all the time is as Shredder's daughter and her familial relationship with him. And it's a very good series. It's unfortunately hard to find right now because all the DVDs are out of print and it's just not out there. But you can find it if you go online, and I recommend watching seasons 1 through 4.
All right,
Jeremy, that's my favorite too. 2003. Yeah. I grew up with the 81 because I was born in 88. I'm the millennial of the group, so I was reluctant to watch the 2003 one. That's good. I loved it, and it made me want to read the comics. That's what really got me. I was like, this is amazing. What is this? It's so different and cool and rad. That's why I started wanting to look up the old books and stuff. So 2003 for me, with a shout out to the 2012 one. 2012 is actually pretty good.
It wasn't bad, no.
So we have a little bit of a side question. I'm going to send this one to Doc because it's comic book related. Udius Lee I had a debate with my dad about whether superheroes, male or female, should have eating disorders or not to showcase their struggle and overcome them. He said no. Do you agree with him?
I think that. I mean, I think something like an eating disorder is a little too mundane, but and it's a little too kind of out there and a little too on the nose, current year, kind of thing. But generally their problems, yes, I think they should, their problems should be their personal life problems, their own, neuroses and shit like that should be part of their character. It should be seen. It should.
Well, they'd be boring if they didn't have any foibles to overcome, wouldn't they?
Exactly. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge DC fan, because their characters are a little too godly for me. They don't.
I was going to mention Emerald Dawn. Hal Jordan has a massive drinking disorder. He's a huge alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean,
Emerald Dawn. Yeah.
I mean, from time to time, DC would cover some of that stuff, but for the most part, their characters were a little too above the concerns of mere mortals.
I think with DC, with their comics, is that the characters they can have their problems, they have their secret identities and the complications that come with those. But a lot of the times in DC Comics, the characters are running away for these like year-long events, in outer space or in the multiverse or someplace, and then they never address what's going on in their personal lives. Like Superman goes off on a space adventure for 6 months. Like, why didn't he get fired from the Daily Planet? Why didn't Clark Kent get fired? They just don't address that stuff. Whereas Marvel, that's a huge thing. If Spidey goes to fight the Secret Wars, he comes back and, Aunt May is worried sick about him, and J. Jonah Jameson is going to fire him, and all that. There's all that collateral for their personal lives that complicates everything.
I was just going to say that Hal Jordan did get fired from a test pilot at Ferris Airfield. Just Hal Jordan's the best.
Hey, Tim, did you have any thoughts on this question? I know you read a lot of comics. You're a writer. What do you think about?
Not particularly. I typically agree with Mark because I'm a newbie when it comes to this type of stuff. But I will say this. So I don't know if let's see. Chicken sits in the chat. Good friend of ours. He says, fighting word. He says, I'm the opposite of Mark. Having read the Tick comics first, the cartoon annoyed me, and the TV show took its entire season to grow on me. I didn't even know at the time that the Tick premiered as a cartoon that it was actually based on the comic, even though I should have kind of figured it out just based on the block that it was in. I will say though, like a lot of people, this is like the really unpopular opinion, a lot of people like the Amazon series of the Tick, and I just couldn't get into it. I saw maybe 5 episodes of the first season, and it just wasn't for me.
I think 9 out of 10 Amazon originals are pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
I remember the one with Putty from Seinfeld being pretty funny, but
the Patrick Warburton series. That was the one I watched. Yeah, it was on Fox for one season, and that was the show that I haven't seen the Amazon one, but I watched the Patrick Warburton one from like 15 years ago, and I liked it, but it didn't last very long. So
it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
All right, then we also have Chicken Sith bringing it back to the Turtles. I remember the Turtles in black and white, just pulping punks and Foot Clan like Dread, and I don't think people realize that some of those older ones you go to and the Turtles are like killing people, like slicing heads off. There's like blood all over the place.
Yeah, no big deal.
When I was really into Turtles when Mirage first launched, and it's like all my friends were like, Thor and all these Amazing Spider, mainstream titles, and they're like, what are you reading this crap? What is this? Mutant Ninja Turtles? What the hell? Like look in it, and I opened it up and was like, damn, he cut that guy's head off. Yeah, this is not kid stuff here. But once they got over the initial reaction, he was like, oh well, they took it seriously.
Yeah, when you read like Mirage TMNT #1, the famous issue that was supposed to be a one-shot, the one where they kill Shredder and he blows himself up at the end after the rooftop battle, like that issue, when you read it, it very much reads, there's an argument whether it's a parody or an homage or a little of both, whatever you want to call it, but it does read like an homage to Frank Miller's Daredevil. And even the cover, the cover logo that says TMNT, there are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the bloody hand behind it holding up the bloody sword is, a reference to the cover logo for Ronin by Frank Miller. And it very much reads almost like a joke, but the comic takes itself very seriously. And it feels like if you just read that one comic in a vacuum without any other Turtle knowledge, you're like, oh, that was a really funny send-up of Frank Millerisms. I quite enjoyed that. But then they did more issues, and they built their own mythology, and they built their own universe, and a whole lot of world building and supporting cast and everything, and new villains. And it may have started out as a parody or an homage, but then it quickly transformed into its own unique identity and its own unique IP.
Well, look at it now; it's a powerhouse of a name.
Absolutely, it's owned by Viacom.
Well, it's also the top-selling independent comic on the market now that Walking Dead's gone. Of course, when Saga comes back, that'll be number one. But also, Mark, so, what are your thoughts? Are TMNT and Daredevil in the same universe?
Yeah. So that's one of those things where I would almost like them to be, but only in the 80s comics. I don't think I want the Ninja Turtles to get stuck in a modern Marvel comic. But yeah, it's very much a really clear gag if you go back and you read Ninja Turtles #1, is that their origin story is that this truck containing canisters of radioactive material accidentally runs over a blind man who's crossing the street, and Splinter points out a young boy jumped out into the street and pushed the blind man out of the way, but the radioactive canister hit him in the eyes, and then it rolled down into the sewers where it landed on you turtles. But it's very much like that kid that got hit in the eyes with the canister is young Matt Murdock, and that canister that hit Daredevil as a kid is the canister that created Ninja Turtles. It's not canon because they're owned by different companies, but it's very much an in-joke.
Well, it actually was. Frank Miller did address that at a con one time, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's in Marvel Multiverse Earth 24627, whatever." So he just gave a zip code for where he was living at the time off the top of his head, and I thought that was kind of cute.
Yeah, that's good enough for me.
But he's like, yeah, it's from, he gave like a Chicago zip code or something, like wherever he was living at the time, and he's like, yeah, that's that world, that Marvel universe. Like, oh, okay.
Now there's a Wikipedia page with that.
So, Mark, you guys had like a little teaser in there that your Black Ops is actually connected to another universe with one of your memos, I believe. What was that?
So our I think
okay.
That was more of me, because Mark has no control.
Put in that Easter egg. Yeah, that's all Tim.
Let's see. There's a couple, but the big one. So I guess you were very astute, because someone found it on Twitter. They pointed it out, and I was like, I think you're the only person to have found it. So it sounds like you found it too, Wes. So it's actually the hardest Easter egg to find, and it's in issue 1. And I mean, I'm going to deny all plausible. I'm going to have all plausible deniability when I say this, but there is a reference in a memo in book 1 where it's directed to the CIA director named George Sears, but it's covered by a coffee stain that was strategically put there. And someone on Twitter was like, wait a minute, George Sears is also the president of the United States in Metal Gear, who turns out to be the bad guy, Solidus Snake. Does this mean that your universe exists in the same world as Metal Gear? And I was like, that's a really good observation. Maybe.
I imagine Hideo Kojima would jump on this if you ever found out. He'd be like, great, this is awesome. We now have our own comic book universe. He'd be jumping on that.
Well, and it's just apropos that we're talking about Ninja Turtles, because Ninja Turtles was a big inspiration for Black Ops. So one of the things that we don't like doing as far as marketing, I hate the marketing tactic of, it's like Ninja Turtles meets Superman. It's like Batman meets Power Rangers. Like, I don't like that. And so we avoid all connections, but we're very free to talk about our inspirations. And I would say that our biggest inspirations were definitely Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe. Ninja Turtles thematically, because when you look at the history of the comic, it was kind of that thing where, like, we know it now as this kind of multimedia franchise, but when they first introduced Ninja Turtles the comic, the reaction that people had were like, wait a minute, it's turtles, but they're ninjas? Like, no one knew what to think about it. Then they read it and they're like, oh my gosh, this thing's amazing. And we kind of wanted the same thing. In fact, the first script that Mark gave to me, it was a parody. And I told him, I said, look, the story is fine, but the tone is way too comedic. We have to have the same presentation as Ninja Turtles. Have it be really ridiculous on its face, but take it seriously once people start reading it. So Ninja Turtles, big influence, but definitely G.I. Joe, definitely Metal Gear. In fact, I think there's a reoccurring gag in Volume 1 and Volume 2 where we put the exclamation point above people's heads. And that's a throwback to Metal Gear, like awesome. Soldiers. Like whenever you're caught being stealthy, the exclamation point appears with that ring sound attached to it. We really wanted to do that. So a lot of the homages we have are very intentional.
You mean my ringtone from 5 years ago?
That's my ringtone right now. I have the Metal Gear ringtone. Yeah,
That's awesome.
So what's crazy is, you look at Black Ops, and we'll get back to TMNT in a second. But you read it, like, oh, it's a bunny. He's gonna be blowing stuff up. It's pretty funny. Then you go and you read it, and you read his origin story and what happened to like the guy that raised him and everything. And you got like a little tear coming down. You're like, man, that bunny is so brave. I can't believe they did him like that. So for being like a silly comic, it definitely has a serious side to it. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I actually like that you don't over anthropomorphize the bunny. I love that. It's just, he's more like a bunny. He's of course he's like cutting people's throats and stuff like that. But it's the fact that he doesn't have like thumbs, and he's not like standing with his arms crossed or something like that, or he's doing what bunnies do. He's not a hare. He's not, he's a bunny rabbit.
And that was definitely intentional because we had to give him a weakness. It's kind of like so originally it was a lot more crazy. One of the things that it was my fault, I decided on it, but I was like, no, he should basically be like Superman level strength. Like he can kick tanks and stuff. And it was like, we have to give this guy some weaknesses. So physically, he's still a rabbit. I mean, if he got shot, like he's shot, he's a rabbit. So he has to be pretty fast on his feet. He is super strong though. I mean, we've shown that he can kick deer, and do pretty good at that. He can kick people and essentially like crush your skull because he has a degree of super strength, but he's not impervious. And one of the things that Mark did was, especially at the end of issue 1, he put the scene in there, and I told him, I was like, oh my gosh, the scene is like sad. And he goes, I know I've done a good job if people say they cried at the end. And sure enough, within like a week of that book coming out, people were messaging us on Twitter and being like, oh my gosh, like I cried at the end. And Mark was like, mission accomplished.
Yes.
He broke a lot of hearts. Feature.
So you saying at the beginning, USA GI was a bunny Sue?
A bunny Sue, yes.
It's actually funny because our original, so you say Bunny Sue, but our original plot for it had nothing to do with the current iteration. He was actually a rabbit named Bunzu, like Sun Tzu with a bun.
Oh and gosh.
I actually copyrighted and trademarked that name, so we're gonna use it at some point for another character, but yeah, he was kind of overpowered at the beginning, and so we had to tone it down. But that was like a big thing so Matt Weldon, he redesigned the character, and I like the redesign. And he has I asked him, do you study like rabbit anatomy? He was like, nah, I just kind of draw it the way I see it. So we do take some liberties to give him some flexibility so he's not as static. But, we do insist he can't hold guns. Patriotter can, though, because Patriotter does have opposable thumbs. So he has some limitations to him physically, which I think translate well in terms of what he can and can't do.
All right. So let's get back into the TMNT stuff. So Udios Lee is asking, what is the best TMNT comic book story ever written? I know for me, it's the Secret History of the Foot Clan. That was awesome.
That's a great one, Tim. You read that one. What did you think of it?
So much history.
So I'm gonna say it's a blend between that and just the storyline of the turtles being basically reincarnated. So the reason why I say that is because that was the hardest sell for me. In fact, I remember when Mark and I had heard the news for the first time, like, oh, in the new continuity, the turtles are actually resurrected, reincarnated sons of Hamato Yoshi. And I was like, pass. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And so when I read it, Mark had gone through first, and he was like, hey, I hate to admit it, but it's actually really well written. So I read it, and I was like, holy cow, this is really good. Like, I can't see it as any other way besides this, because it has a very unifying aspect to the turtles. It wasn't just like a freak accident that made them. Turns out there's a huge back history.
When they have people haven't read it, but when the scene with the Hamato Yoshi and his sons, who he takes and he hides them to protect them, and then it finally doesn't work. It was like one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever read in a comic. I was like, this is really sad.
I mean, what's great about that scene too is that, I mean, it's done tastefully. It's kids it's entire family getting executed and getting their heads chopped off, but it's not done like some gory exploitative thing, and it's done tastefully. It's very sad and very somber, and it's just a really well done comic. And Mateus Sanaloco is just a beast of an artist, and I'm interested in seeing how good of a writer he is when I get to reading Shredder in Hell, because he wrote that one too.
Yeah, that one's a different beast. There's a lot of like metaphorical, like you're seeing. Oh, I can't even get into it, but that's a great comic. That's an amazing story arc. Jeremy, do you have a favorite TMNT story?
I guess mostly just what I'm reading. I guess if I'm going to say anything, just the modern stuff right now. I don't mind the new turtle, the girl turtle. I think that's a really good story arc. I think. I think I'm in the minority on that one. I don't think it's a big deal as everyone's making it.
Yeah, I've had a few customers kind of arch their eyebrows and go, they're kind of more turtle purists, I guess. But most readers don't seem to care.
I don't really care. The only thing that bothers me is City That Wars of kind of a boring story, is my opinion. And then Chicken Sith is saying his goes back all the way to the first one when Donnie kills so and so at the end. Led to some great stuff with the Triceratons eventually. What do you think about that, Mark?
So I like the Triceratons. When it comes to turtles, I'm really not big on the outer space stuff. It's fun for like a little while, but a lot of the times when they go into space and they meet the Federation, the Utroms and the Triceratons, those are storylines that go on for way too long. But I like them. That the original Mirage Outer Space arc isn't one of my favorites. It established all that stuff and is very important to the mythology of the series. I don't like it very much, though. My favorite Ninja Turtle story arc is the one where the Shredder comes back and he and the Foot Clan catch Leonardo alone while he's out running and just absolutely trash him. And it's the Leonardo micro series, which is done silently, except for a small strip on the bottom of each page of what the other turtles are doing at the apartment at April's place, completely unaware of what's going on in the other 9/10 of the page above them, as Leonardo is just getting his skull kicked in. And it is a fantastic comic. And then it's followed up with TMNT number 10, which is after Leonardo gets thrown through the window and the Foot Clan invades April's apartment, and they lose. The Shredder comes back from the dead, and he beats them all up, and they lose, and they have to run away into exile and escape. And it gets adapted a lot. The first live-action movie did it. The 2003 cartoon did it. The 2012 cartoon did it. Even the IDW comic did it. I think it's their most classic storyline is when the Shredder comes back, kicks the hell out of them, and they have to run away, and then eventually do their comeback. The Return to New York storyline, the sequel storyline, which is also really good. But I think it's the most iconic turtle story, and it's just so happens that the original comic that did it first is excellent. So that's the one that I recommend to anybody.
So Sophie Campbell is the one that redid it in the micro series for IDW, correct?
Campbell went by Ross Campbell at that time. Yeah. So
that's actually one of the that's actually one of the better of the micro series where they introduced. Remember there's being two really great ones. There's the Leonardo one. I believe it was the Donatello.
Oh yeah, that introduces Harold. Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah, those were the two really good ones. The other two kind of throwaway, even though Raphael is my favorite character. But
the Raphael micro series, that's the one that introduces Alopex, and it's all right. But it's not as good as those other two. And the Michelangelo one is the one that's kind of it introduces a character. I can't even remember her name, but she's a detective. And she shows up in the comic like 50 issues later. They forgot about her. Kara Lewis, that's the character's name. And she's just kind of a non-entity in the books. And you can skip the Michelangelo micro if you want. It has Andy Kuhn was the artist on that one. And he's a very divisive artist. He's not very good at drawing turtles. He's good at drawing everyone else, though. And they put him on the Mighty Mutanimals miniseries, but they didn't have any turtles in it. And his art was great on that. But whenever they put him on the series to draw the Ninja Turtles, they look really dumb. I'd skip that one.
They'd have to be a good Turtles artist to be on a Turtles book,
I think so.
Yeah.
So Mark, I know IDW does like a ton of crossovers. They're always crossing the Turtles over with. Is there one of the crossovers that stands out for you that was actually really good?
Oh, the Ghostbusters one. I mean, just like hands down. they nailed the TMNT Ghostbusters, and they're doing a third volume, I think, after the Transformers Ghostbusters one wraps up, which is also really good. But both Ninja Turtles Ghostbusters crossovers are fantastic. One of the things I love about those crossovers is they do something that a lot of people forget to do with the Ninja Turtles, is that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are teenagers. They're kids. And a lot of people who write them as adults. They forget that they're supposed to be kids. So when they cross over with the Ghostbusters treat them like teenagers, and the Turtles look to the Ghostbusters as adults. So their whole dynamic isn't like buddy, Raph and Casey Jones kind of teaming up. It's the Turtles are kids, the Ghostbusters are adults. The Turtles look to the Ghostbusters as like mentor figures, and the Ghostbusters look to the Turtles as someone that they can teach because they're still growing up. And it's a dynamic that seems so obvious, but we never get in most media. And it's done so well because each turtle finds a Ghostbuster who inspires them. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's obvious, like Donatello and Egon, but sometimes it's a bit more out there, like Leonardo and Winston, because both of them are kind of like they're the very serious characters who have to keep everybody else in line. And Winston is ex-military. That's actually part of his backstory that didn't really make it into the movies, but it's explored more in the IDW comic. And so when he's talking with Leonardo, he's giving him advice that from his experience in boot camp and in the Marines and stuff. And Leonardo's absorbing all that. And then when they go back to the main IDW comic, they can't mention the Ghostbusters by name. I think they refer to them as the Ghost Guys whenever they refer to those issues for licensing reasons. But everything they learned in the Ghostbusters TMNT miniseries, they apply in the IDW ongoing series, and it actually develops and grows the characters. And it's one of the best things about that book, and especially about those crossovers.
So if they do the next Ghostbusters crossover, is that going to include the crossing over stuff from Ghostbusters? Because I know it kind of put a damper on some people's enjoyment.
I hope not. So the IDW Ghostbusters comic by Dan Schoening, Eric Burnham, and Jose Luis Delgado, it's fantastic. I would recommend that in a heartbeat to anybody. It picks up after Ghostbusters the video game, so it's in the movie continuity. The problem is that 2016, the Ghostbusters Answer the Call movie came out. Sony told IDW, you have to put these characters in your comic now so we can promote the movie. And so they started showing up in every issue of the Ghostbusters comic. And I think the two story arcs are called Ghostbusters 101 and Ghostbusters Crossing Over. But the 2016 characters are just awful. They're unfunny. They get in the way. They drag a good story down. And they're out of the book now. And I'm hoping they stay out of the book forever. But there's like a 16, 20 issue run on the IDW Ghostbusters comic that has those characters in it. And it's got a really good story. The writing by Eric Burnham, it's still his writing. He just can't salvage those characters because they're so fundamentally obnoxious and terrible. That's the only thing I recommend avoiding with the IDW Ghostbusters comic is 101 and Crossing Over. But everything else, go crazy. They're fantastic.
Oh, where did Les go?
Maybe went to the bathroom.
Okay, well, I guess that leaves me in charge again, and I still know nothing about Ghostbusters. I don't.
Nothing about Ghostbusters,
my experience with the Ghostbusters was 2 movies in the 80s, and like 5 episodes of the cartoon when I was like 9.
That cartoon was a treat when it was on.
It was great, but I still know nothing about the Ghostbusters.
I literally had no idea that show existed till just last night.
I literally.
Oh, really? Wow.
I was like, what? Damn millennials.
So everyone knows, like, the first one, the Ghostbusters cartoon had like a big gorilla and everything, right?
No, the 70s. Yeah, I actually watched the 1970s live action.
The Ghostbusters?
The Ghostbusters. The one with Larry Storch and a couple of the people from F Troop for some reason. I watched through that whole thing, and I reviewed it like 5 or 6 years ago for a website called AIPT. And it's rough. Not a very good show.
That's why the cartoon's called The
painful.
Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, there was a whole rights issues thing where Filmation was originally contracted. So what happened was Columbia Pictures wanted to make the movie called Ghostbusters, but Filmation held the trademark to that title because of the TV series from the 70s. So they made an agreement with Filmation where Filmation would get a percentage of the profits of the movie if they would license the name to Columbia. So they did that contract, and then Columbia did some shady Hollywood bookkeeping where technically Ghostbusters didn't make any money, even though that's not true. They found some way to cook the books to make it say that Ghostbusters was done at a loss. So they never had to pay any money to Filmation for the rights to the title. So Filmation, in revenge, did their Ghostbusters cartoon series because they still had the rights to do that. The one with the gorilla, that was a spin-off of the live action show. And that forced Columbia to call their show The Real Ghostbusters in retaliation. And it was just this really petty back and forth between Columbia and Filmation. And I guess Columbia won.
Wait, so what you're saying is Hollywood is full of petty shitheads.
Oh, yeah.
I'm shocked by this revelation.
But yeah, it's I remember the cartoon as a kid, and I don't know if I was really a kid, more like a teenager, but it was impressive. It was ahead of its time.
It's I think it's a hidden gem of 80s cartoons, because when people think of 80s cartoons, they think of Transformers and G.I. Joe and Centurions and stuff. And Real Ghostbusters wasn't like any of those shows. It has a sitcom quality to its humor. It's very, very funny, and it's very laid back. It's not toy driven. The show practically never introduced the toys from the Kenner line in the show itself. So it doesn't do like what Transformers and G.I. Joe does, where every other episode they're like, quick, everybody back to the Autobot headquarters playset. And they don't do that in Real Ghostbusters. It's a writing driven show, but the first 2 seasons have very good animation from a Japanese studio called Tokyo Movie Shinsha. A lot of people think that 80s cartoons all kind of looked really bad. Go back and revisit at least the first 2 seasons of Real Ghostbusters. Just pick a random episode because there's no continuity. And I think you'd be surprised at how well that show holds up.
Well, I remember when I was of that age, and on Saturday morning, there was like the blocks of shows, and about between 8 and 10, you had like the really, really young kids type stuff. And then around 10 o'clock, it switched over to Super Friends and Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny and stuff like that. And you had more like the older kids type. And then at noon is when the teenage type of cartoons came on, and it started with Ghostbusters. And then you had Dungeons and Dragons. And then you had, it was just like what now would be considered like big seminal hits, that were the big trademark cartoons of the 80s.
I remember the Hanna-Barbera 2 hours block where it was just all their big cartoons.
I just remember USA Cartoon Express.
I remember that too. They had, that was on before school. That was on weekday mornings, when you got up at 6 a.m. Yeah, and
that was USA Network. That was on cable though. I mean, there's those of us that lived out in the boonies, who only had TV antennas. So it's like I remember very fondly that if I wanted to watch Ghostbusters, I had to go outside and move the antenna. So the antenna was on this big, huge pole that went up beside the house, and I'd have to go outside and turn the antenna west so that I could watch Ghostbusters. Then I had to go back outside after Ghostbusters and turn the antenna the other way so I could tune into Dungeons and Dragons. But
so we had cable, but we had cable on 2 TVs, so we had 2 cable boxes. The problem was that it was me, my mom, and my brother. So my mom had her cable box, and she got that was hers. And then my brother and I had to share the TV with the other cable box, and I'm the younger brother, which means I always lost. So Chris would just sit there, and he would watch the same episode of Sports Center for 12 hours in a row, watching the bottom line. I had to use the black and white TV with the rabbit ears to watch whatever I wanted, like cartoons after school or before. So I did watch a lot of broadcast network cartoons, like whatever was on that I could get with that little crappy antenna, because that's what I had to do.
Hey, I managed to figure out that with the TV that we had, that if I just pulled the knob off and hid it in my toy box, nobody else could change the channel.
That's devious.
You know what we learned at my house was if you get your little brother to go put his hand on the rabbit ears and put his arm up, the cartoon comes in better. And my little brother would be like standing there like this, like wanting to like watch the cartoon. Like, don't move, man. It's perfect. But we always like was it wrestling on Saturday, because you would get Glow Wrestling, then you get WCW, and then you get WWF. It's like a 3-hour block.
Wow.
The World Continental Wrestling was the shizzle. I mean, that's where you had like Wildcat Wendell Cooley, and it's like it was the shit, man. It was really, really good. The Wildcat.
Tim's been quiet for a bit, but Tim watched wrestling. I think, was it the late 90s, Tim? You watched like The Rock and that era?
No, I don't think it was late 90s. That was like early 2000s. The Rock, Mankind, Triple H. Stone Cold era.
Like
is that the Attitude era?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that was good stuff. That was I watched wrestling
Undertaker
for like 5 years, I think.
Yeah, you know what that was? The like 99 is when all that stuff kind of happened, isn't it? The Monday night, everything got really good for like 5 years, and then it just went to hell when WCW folded.
Yeah, it was Raw and SmackDown. I was there when they debuted SmackDown, and you had The Rock, and I mean everything was good. I look back at it, and I was just like, because now I don't speak derisively of wrestling, but I'm like, what the heck was I doing watching that? Like, I don't know. I think one day I just saw like these dudes like trash talking each other, and I was like, hey, this should be entertaining. And I felt like those dudes in the South Park episode where the kids have backyard wrestling, and I'm just sitting in the stands with like a wine glass and like opera glasses. I'm like, yes, delightful storyline indeed. But that was good stuff. I completely forgot they had a wrestling cartoon too. I had the Roddy Piper action.
Oh yeah, the WWF Rock and Wrestling thing.
Yeah, they had that. They had that, and I think they had some. I think Hulk Hogan was on the. There was some all sports super. They were all professional athletes.
Pro stars. The pro stars. Yeah.
Because I think Michael Jordan was on it. Wayne Gretzky.
and I remember Sergeant Slaughter ended up being a G.I. Joe as well.
Yeah, they always made fun of Gretzky on that.
I forgot about that cartoon. Yeah, that was great. Cartoons suck nowadays compared to that stuff.
Absolutely.
now it's basically all LSD fueled nonsense.
Although I will say I tried to watch Thundercats. It doesn't hold up. Oh god,
Thundercats Roar. Oh, it's horrible. God,
it's so good when I was a kid, but I tried to watch it when I was in Afghanistan. I had like the first few seasons. I was like, "This isn't good anymore."
Thundercats. It's it's clumsy. I guess it's not as refined, as cartoons we expect now. I think it still did a lot that other shows weren't doing at the time. Like it did have an internal continuity, and it actually did really well at maintaining its consistency in its mythology. It did a better job of it than like Transformers, which had like 3 different origins for the Constructicons, and it was always contradicting itself. Thundercats had a story Bible and adhered to it. It's very episodic, and it can be very boring sometimes.
Well, look at the Thundercats in the 1980s. I mean, and look at the animation quality then, and then look at like the Tumblr crap.
Oh, there's no there is no competition now. I mean, Thundercats Roars, it's trying to be like Teen Titans Go and Steven Universe.
It's terrible.
The problem right now is that this is a larger conversation. I guess we could have another day when we aren't 2 hours into a stream. But the problem right now is that there are no more script writers in the animation industry anymore. Cartoons in the 80s were script driven. So the script was written first by a writer, and then it was given to the storyboarders, and the storyboarders adapted the script into the storyboards. With the director then would make the revisions, and they'd send that off to the animator and so forth. That's different from a board-driven cartoon. A board-driven cartoon is like Looney Tunes and Ren and Stimpy, where it's the storyboard artist is the one who just goes from brain to storyboard, drawing the pictures, so it's very visually motivated. It doesn't need a strong story or complex characters or mythology or world building or background, information, none of that. It's all just like the pictures are funny. And that works for like a 7-minute short, like, Ren and Stimpy or Looney Tunes. The problem right now, though, with these shows like Steven Universe and OKKO is that they're board-driven shows that want to have a complex continuity and character development that a script-driven show would have. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that in a board-driven show because it doesn't work. And so that's why these shows are so lousy, because they're always contradicting their own canon. They never follow on with their storylines and their character development. Characters are always going back to status quo. Plot threads are forgotten about, and it never has a satisfying conclusion. The pacing is way off because they're trying to do what script-driven shows do, but in a board-driven show, and it just doesn't work. And it's one of the many problems that animation is having right now, but that's why these shows, they try to do the best of both worlds, end up doing nothing right. So they aren't good by either standards.
Booming in the West here?
Yeah, because anime is script driven, and so it has these more complex characters and storylines and more consistent narratives. Whereas you try to watch Adventure Time, and it starts out as a funny little, like a 7-minute short episodic series, but once it starts trying to build its mythology and develop its characters, it turns into a huge mess. It just becomes joyless. Yeah.
No. All right, Tim, we have this one for you from Chicken Sith. Why is it almost across the board the hand-drawn sellout animation quality is so much higher than the modern digital cartoons? I completely agree with you. I think most modern digital cartoons look like trash.
They look like ass. They really do.
I think part of it has to do with, there's two things. One is training. So obviously back in the day, to create a better product, everyone was kind of trained in animation style and things like that. But this is the argument I make for cell-based animation as far as cartoons are concerned. So I do think that within a decade, probably 10 years from now, that there's going to be a revival in hand-drawn animated movies, because right now, like especially with Disney, everything is computer generated. And I think the reason why is not just because of the nature of things to go back, like a pendulum swinging, going back to how things were, but it's also the fact that when you look at hand-drawn stuff, there is something about the human mind that enjoys seeing craftsmanship. And it doesn't matter how digitally refined and how sharp and crisp your drawings are. There's something about knowing that it was designed by human hands that is appealing. And even though you intuitively know that whether it's CGI or digital art, even though you know that someone sat down and did it, someone did it when you actually get to see something that's actually hand-drawn in kind of an older style. So I think that's part of the reason why it quote-unquote looks better. It's kind of like, Mark and I talk about this with regards to Disney animation, and I don't specifically know what Mark's definite opinion is, but we look at like the xerography style from Disney movies like The Jungle Book and The Aristocats. I like it because you can actually see kind of the pencil shadings and the drawings that were underpinning the cell animation. I like that because as an artist, I appreciate seeing kind of like the skeletal structure of how a drawing is. I feel like you can actually see the craftsmanship at work.
Yeah, the xerography era, I remember not liking it as a kid because I thought it looked sloppy. Like there'd be parts where Winnie the Pooh's hanging from his balloon, and then suddenly you can just see the structure lines, the curved lines like in the middle of his head and things like didn't get erased by the cleanup artist. But I watch it now and I kind of see like, well, they didn't have a cleanup artist. That means that there was nobody who was redrawing and retracing the animator's lines. This is the animator's original work, his original vision, and you can see every detail to it. And it's not that long of an era for the animation. I think it went from 101 Dalmatians through Great Mouse Detective, and even by the end there, by Great Mouse Detective, they were doing more cleanup on it. But it's a very unique style. It's something we'll never see in cartoons again. So I look back and I appreciate it for being unique of its era.
Now that we're kind of on the topic, I know this year I think The Lion King became the highest growing animated film of all time. And if you look at the Lion King movie from that was like 92, maybe it was 94, something like that, versus the CGI one, it's not even close. The one from the 90s destroys it. It just looks better, but Disney keeps like pushing out these stupid live action movies. There's not a live action, and do you think we're going to stop doing this? Because I hate it.
When it stops making money is when they'll stop doing it.
Yeah,
and it's going to keep making money for a while.
Well, it's just nostalgia.
We were talking about this before we went live. Going back to this idea of pictograms that we use in Black Ops, Mark and I are proponents of the idea that each medium is designed specifically to have things in it that you cannot do in another medium, which is why Mark and I personally, we don't like proof of concept comics. If your comic reads like thumbnails from a movie, I'm not going to keep on reading it because I know what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to pitch to Netflix ultimately. And the reality is we like comics to read as comics. There are things you can do in comics that you cannot do in any other medium. And for movies, for example, animated movies, part of the reason why the classic Lion King is superior to the recent reimagining is because in an animated movie, you can do squash and stretch. You can break the laws of physics. You can choose color palettes that in the natural world don't exist because they look good and they're pleasing to the eye. And when you try to translate that into a CG medium where you're attempting verisimilitude, it's not going to be the same because you can't distort those laws, or you can't distort those laws of physics that you can in the animated feature. I mean, we do it all the time in comics. For example, if there's a great shot I want of a character that is, doing a special move or something, you see it all the time in anime and manga. I am going to bend the rules of camera logic to get that shot that I want, and you're limited in the medium of realistic computer generated storytelling. So it's interesting that even in the medium of movies, where you have an audience, you have a theater, you have a screen, it's the fact that you're animating versus trying to come up with something that looks real. You're going to have two completely different sets of rules to work with.
All right, I would like to thank Sergeant Bats for the super chats. $2. Second remakes of the live action remakes are coming.
The 2D remakes, I am all for.
That would be funny.
Are we going to remake the live action Lion King? We got to do that one.
Oh my god, I would love to see that. It's this weird telephone game of movies where it starts out 2D, then it goes 3D, and the 3D gets adapted into 2D, and like by the end of it, it's not going to be the Lion King anymore. It's going to be like the Muskrat King because so much gets lost in translation.
Multiplicity, right? Yeah. Every time you copy, you lose fidelity from the original.
Exactly.
Shitty Xeroxes.
It's not even that good. It's mimeograph.
I'm gonna try and bring this one up, but I'll talk about it real quick. So I'm actually all for that. The one thing I've actually waited for kind of to happen, which I'm surprised hasn't, is I never thought that there would be sequels to Star Wars. I always thought that they would just remake Star Wars as like an animated movie. So just take A New Hope and just make it like an anime version out of it. But someone did this thing and it was just cracking me up. They took the Star Wars Adventures of the Galaxy, so kind of like those shorts on YouTube that Lucasfilm puts out, and they basically just put it to anime music. And when you watch it, you're like, I really want to see this. Like, I want to see this happen. It's the craziest thing. Let me, you guys can keep on talking, and I'll post a link in the chat because it's pretty freaking great. Oh, I found it. Let me turn off my mic so it doesn't blow everyone away, and then I'll post it in the chat because it's pretty cool.
All right, thank you so much, Lorenzo Sleestack, for subbing. Very much appreciated.
Hey, Lorenzo. I follow him on Twitter. He's a good guy.
I also follow him on Twitter. He likes to talk comic books. I like that.
Who does that on Twitter?
Not very many people. Everyone likes to talk about drama nowadays. But who was it? Oh, I missed it. Tim, when you come back, we have another question from Chicken Sip.
I'm back.
Okay, here you go. He's got a question for you. Tim, have you ever drawn Gadget from the Rescue Rangers with battle damage?
I have drawn gadgets, but not with the battle damage. So Chicken Sith apparently listened to our stream last night. Chicken Sith, we gave you a shout out. I did not lie. You were mentioned. You were on our minds. But now that we know that you like these 2.5-hour live streams, we're gonna keep on going just for you, buddy. Like, trust me. I also posted that. I posted that video in the private chat. I don't know why I can't post on the live comments, but if someone wants to throw that out,
I did.
You can. Okay, cool.
All right, so I think we're just about. We'll call this about the end of the TMNT stuff. So we do have another topic we want to talk about. Also, Skip and Tosh is in the chats. Thank you so much for joining me. That is my partner for Outside the Bleed and Geekspan. If you haven't watched this week's Geekspan, I can tell you it's our best one yet. It was a lot of fun. We're talking Star Wars. We're talking Spider-Man, Kevin Feige, George Lucas. So you're going to want to check that out. But next, we had some homework from Mark. I sent it out on Twitter. I put it on the community tab for YouTube. I don't know if everyone went and watched it, but you said you wanted us to watch The Real Ghostbusters Season 2, Episode 8, Night Game. What was that all about, buddy?
Well, so you wanted to talk about campaigning for like comic books and Indiegogos and the ethics of campaigning. And the first thing that came from my experience and Tim and our experience, it just reminded me of this very esoteric thing, this episode of Real Ghostbusters. And I don't know how many of you watched the Daily Motion link. It wasn't necessarily a good copy of the episode. I think they mirrored it. Yeah, it was like in reverse, so they wouldn't get copyright strike. But so the episode Night Game is basically, here's the backstory. The armies of good and evil every 500 years manifest in the same spot to do battle. And one of the rules is that they have to accommodate to their surroundings. So when they appeared 500 years ago for the first time, or the previous time, they fought with bow and arrow and spears and tomahawks because that's what the Indians who were living there in New York at the time were doing. But when they manifest this time in 1986, they manifest in a baseball stadium that was built over their sacred land. So now the armies of good and evil have to play baseball. And so the Ghostbusters show up, and Winston is drafted into the army of good to play shortstop on their team. And the other Ghostbusters, Peter, Ray, and Egon, they have to stand aside because there's too many players, so they have to just watch. And the umpire, who's calling the game, tells them that no one can be neutral in the battle of good and evil, but you guys have to go and stand on the sidelines and watch anyway. And they're like, oh, okay. And so as the game is being played, the other Ghostbusters notice that evil is cheating. Like one of the good members will hit the ball into the air, or the bad guys will hit the ball into the air, and like 50 balls will come like falling down all around Winston, and no one can catch the ball. Or they'll be like, one of them will be using a cannon to shoot the ball out of his face, and with a 200-mile-an-hour fastball that knocks the good person over. And so the Ghostbusters go up to the umpire and like, hey, have you noticed that evil just cheated? And he's like, yeah, they're evil. It's in their nature. That's why we call them evil. Like, so what about good? Good can't win if evil cheats. And like, that's not true. Good just has to play really hard, because if good cheats, it becomes evil, and evil wins. So the Ghostbusters have to stand by and watch basically the good team play with fundamentals, while the evil team is just cheating the whole game through. But eventually, the Ghostbusters decide, well, hey, if we're on the sidelines and we're not playing in the game, we can do what we want. So let's just blast the pitcher while he's pitching to Winston, and then Winston will be able to hit the ball, and good will win. And then they realize, like, well, we can't be no one's neutral. So if we're technically on the good team, so if we do this, we can't. We just have to trust that Winston will win, and Winston does. And the forces of good and evil, dissipate with good the victor again. But the moral of the episode that I always remembered, and applied, is that if you're going to do things right and you're going to do things ethically, no matter what it is you're fighting for, you have to work 10 times harder than the opposition, because the opposition is going to cheat. They're going to attack you, and they're going to do every devious, unscrupulous thing that they can to try and thwart you. But you can't do that. You have to fight back with one hand tied behind your back, which means you have to fight twice as hard. And that can be very discouraging and very disheartening. And we've had to go through a lot of that. Tim and I when making our books. When we published Thump the First 100 Days and My Hero Academia and Walmart, our political parody books, we got attacked from mainstream media sites really hard, and they made up a lot of lies and slander and libel about us. And we just had to keep going on, and it made our work 10 times harder, but we kept doing it. Now that we're publishing comic books on Indiegogo like Black Hops and with Tim and Doug Soulfinder, we're getting attacked by people within this online comics community who don't like what we're doing, and they're slandering us and libeling us and calling us awful things and riling people up against us. But we can't do that. We can't fight on that level. We have to stay ethical. We have to stay on the side of good, essentially, and that isn't the easy way. That's hard mode. That's insanity mode, but we have to fight that much harder. And so that's something that's whenever I'm getting down in the dumps because we're being attacked on all sides, and how much easier it would be if we just attack them right back with the same weapons they're using against us. Like, that's not the way you do it. If you want to be able to stand, not on a high horse, but if you want to say that you did it square like Scrooge McDuck, then you have to do it square, and even if it means working 10 times harder.
Well, and I think that's why we like channels like this, is because you don't focus on the drama. And that's kind of like a thing that Mark and I decided going into the year was, hey, we used to fight a one-sided war. It was like left versus right. And then now we're getting attacked from people who are on the side of like our own political leanings, which is, in our opinion, insane. But there's a lot of bait out there that I think they're trying to get us with. And so there are days when it's tough. It is really, really hard to not say anything, because that you're being talked bad about, and there's a part of your reputation that's at stake. But we made a promise, and that promise was just focus on the comics, just focus on people who are friends, people who are in our network and our community, and especially the fans, and don't get into the weeds. And I think it's paying off, because we get messages all the time from people who are like, we really appreciate the fact that you're not getting into this. And my reply back is thank you. And it's hard. It is very difficult, because I do feel like we're basically being attacked on two fronts, but it's okay, because we're having fun and we're putting the product out there. So for people who are planning on their own crowdfunding campaigns, whether that be on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, I think the best advice give is sometimes, hopefully you're not going to get attacked by anyone, especially if you're doing what you do, but play a fair game, put the work out, your product will speak for itself, and just gradually you're going to get the attention from people who just want to support good comics.
All right, so we got a super chat, $2 from Sergeant Bats. Mark, liking tweets is pure evil. I got to agree with that sentiment. People, there was a little bit of drama about tweet liking. Like Mark said, it's like a minefield out there. Everyone just wants to be mad at you. Anytime you do anything, it's turned into a controversy, or people want to say it's some type of slight against them.
Well, it generates video content.
Yeah, we try to kind of stay out as much as we can here. We're a comic book channel. We're a comic book discussion. Sometimes we will talk about some of the overarching things, but Doc, I know you and Pele are with me. It's best. We just want to talk comics, right?
Yeah. That's the thing, is we're all here for comics. We're not here for drama. And so we hope, and we know that the people who buy our comics, especially Black Ops 2, they're buying it because they thought the comic looked good. Tim and I don't have any celebrity. People aren't buying us for our brand names. People saw Black Ops, liked the idea of it, liked the art in it. And so they are funding Black Ops because they believe in that book. And that means a lot to us, that the people who are supporting us because they appreciate the quality of our work and want to see more of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's times, there's certain actors that are perennially bad actors. And, oh gosh, especially on social media, you just want to just reach out and just throttle them, verbally. And it's just, but... you just can't. I mean, I sometimes indulge in some snide comments, but just the lying and the the hateful backstabbing and stuff like that. You just can't do that. It's just it destroys what you believe in by doing things like that.
Precisely.
And
if you adopt the ways of evil, then you become evil, and evil wins. I know that's really corny, and that's Saturday morning cartoon logic, but you're watching these things as a 6-year-old, and you are absorbing those messages, and hopefully you're applying them to your life as you grow up, and you just have to remember those messages. And
I don't think that the modern cartoons today really get that across the way that the older cartoons did.
No.
Because there were very, very important moral stories told in, like, even in Looney Tunes, and in He-Man and G.I. Joe and stuff like that, of fair play and
the cartoons nowadays, the morals that they are and the lessons they're trying to teach are very self-serving. They're almost all 100% exclusively LGBTQ driven. So the lessons they're teaching aren't about, overcoming adversity or not adopting the ways of evil. They're saying a boy can wear high heels. That's the lesson of this episode. Or 2 girls can get married. That's the lesson of this episode. And it's always this. I know it's the same thing. It's in every show. Okay. There's this trope. I think it's probably on TV tropes by now, but it's called Last Minute Lesbians. And it's because just in the past couple of years, all these shows on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network, the last episode of every show, just suddenly 2 of the female characters hook up in like the last scene, and they're lesbians, even though they didn't have any chemistry or any romantic, relationship throughout the whole series. The series finale, Last Minute Lesbians, suddenly, and it's because every show is made in California by the same group of people, and they all just recycle each other's ideas over and over again, and it becomes this hive mind, and that's why you keep seeing the same thing over and over again. And it goes back to our initial discussion, like Tim was saying, people are reading manga and watching anime because they're getting legitimate diversity of genres, diversity of characters and stories, diversity of morals. They aren't getting the same regurgitated stuff over and over again.
And that's really kind of clubbed comics over the head in the larger scheme of things that we're seeing a lot in modern comics. Is you get like the Tom King story, which is Batman succumbing to his base nature, and that's
Batman's sad.
That's not my Batman.
All right, guys, we already talked about the old cartoons and stuff, but we got a comment by Perch. He has a great YouTube channel. I'm absolutely angry about everything, and everything people say to me is offensive. I wish more people would cater to my desires and not just fuss about it. God, you think you're the angriest man on Twitter? You think that you're the angriest man in comics? Perch says he's the angriest man in comics. Can you be more angry than Perch?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
I got this, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. No.
It's hard to be angry at Perch when his avatar is Winnie the Pooh.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm the angriest man in comics, so bother.
Yeah, no, like, honestly, I'm just, you know what? I used to be a lot more angry at this stupid crap. And now I don't care. None of this matters. Just buy things you like, ignore things you don't. And at this point, you know what? I mean, we've said everything we need to say. We've done what we need to do. Just companies, if they're going to ignore the will of their customer base, if they're going to just disregard who they're, recognizing who their target audience is. I mean, hey, Raina Telgemeier makes a lot of great young adult stuff. She cracked the code on that. That's awesome. Congrats to her. And I can understand Marvel and DC wanting to get a little bit of that money, but at the same time, Marvel, DC, Valiant, Dark Horse, well, not Dark Horse so much, but at least for those 3, your bread and butter is 8 to 15-year-old boys. Sorry.
There really isn't anything ashamed about saying.
It's really like 25 to 45-year-old dudes now because they ruin the kids audience. But
yes, but I mean, for decades, it was 8 to 15-year-old boys as their bread and butter. And honest to God, if they got themselves back into, with just their marquee flagship titles, back into normie spaces, that would become their bread and butter all over again. And they'd also create a new generation that 15 to 20 years from now are those 25 to 40-year-old dudes throwing out, $200 a week instead of $10 a week.
Once they get good jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
So, Tim, I wanted to talk about crowdfunding. That was the last topic. How many books have you done, and how many books have you done with Mark now at this point?
So we've done everything together, actually, because even on the books where Mark is not the primary writer, like Trump Space Force or Soul Finder, he actually was behind the scenes. In the case of Trump Space Force, he did some script revisions to put more humor into it. So he put a lot of jokes, and that's why he has a writing credit inside the book. And for Soul Finder, he actually went through Doug Ernst's first 2 drafts and did some proofreading and gave his analysis on it. So technically, we've done everything together. But since 2017 with Thump up until now, so 2 years, if you include Soul Finder and Trump Space Force, we've put out 8 books cumulatively.
Were those all crowdfunded?
Thump was not crowdfunded. That's the only one. Thump was not crowdfunded. My Hero Macadamia was not crowdfunded. And Black Ops 1, the Volume 1, was not crowdfunded either.
Okay, so totally you've done 5 crowdfunded books and you've delivered 3 of them, correct?
Yes, so we're only waiting on Soul Finder and Black Ops 2. Those will actually be fulfilling simultaneously. So I finished the art on Soul Finder in June, and then immediately, the next day, started Black Ops 2. And that one I had some help with because Matt Weldon is doing basically half the book. And so that really, really helped in terms of our efficiency. And Matt's faster than me. He does about 2 pages a day. I do 1 a day. And if I'm not drawing, I'm lettering or coloring. And then Brett Smith is wrapping up the colors on Soul Finder, and I'm lettering that one too. So if all goes well, Brett says that the final pages of Soul Finder will be done next week, and I'm wrapping up the final pages of Black Ops. So it's a race to see which book will come out first. But both of the books will be delivered by December for sure.
So what, how has your process changed? When you first go into a crowdfunding campaign, I think you'd already done Thump and My Hero Macadamia, correct?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So you know how to develop and publish a book, but you never done it really on your own. How much has your system changed? How much more efficient are you? How many things did you not realize were potentially critical failures and you didn't even know that you had to address them?
Yeah. So part of it, the big lesson I learned was, one, crowdfunding is good because in publishing, especially if you're an indie guy, you're not making much money per book, not unless you have a knockout hit. You're making anywhere between $500 and $1,000 per book if you're starting out, and that's if you're lucky, just based on either an upfront payment or sale or
for you guys to share.
That's for me, and I split it with Mark. So it's My Hero Macadamia, the first printing, we had a $500 advance. So Mark and I split that $250, and luckily that book took off where we had multiple reprints. So we could get we went through 7. We're on our 8th, I think our 7th or 8th printing right now. So we got some residuals. Thump, oh my gosh, this is kind of inside baseball, but that book has gone into 9 printings, and we've only seen 2 royalty payments out of it. So one thing that we're going to do is the rights revert back to us in October 31st. And we're probably just going to crowdfund Thump 2 because the publishing world is it's bonkers in terms of how much red tape you have to go through just to get paid. And so we were we have to get paid for our work. And so crowdfunding, we get paid up front. Typically it's a flexible goal where, hey, any dollar helps, to just make sure that we can at least pay for our overhead. But one of the biggest lessons we learned is I am big on scheduling. And Doug Ernst will tell you this too. I am big on schedules. I like keeping a schedule. for Trump Space Force, the reason we were 30 days late was because I was trusting this mom and shop here in town to do the patches. I kept on getting the runaround where they're going to be here next week. And the week after that, oh, they should be here any minute now. And then after 2 months, I was like, where are the patches? And it's like, oh, we had to outsource them that. And he came in like the last week of October. We could have been fulfilling. And now I'm in a completely different problem. So that was part of it in terms of crowdfunding is the team that you get and who you trust. And my problem was I trusted the mom and pop because I like supporting mom and pop businesses. But the reality is the proof is in the pudding. If you can't deliver based on my schedule, I have to let you go and I have to go with someone else. So Doug Ernst, luckily, he had that same mentality going in. Philosophy was make sure to under-promise yet over-deliver. And so for every crowdfunding that we're doing from this point forward, there's a couple things we keep in mind. One, the book is always 95% complete before we launch any crowdfunding. That way the audience knows you are going to get a book and you are going to get it on time. And two, we always overshoot our projected delivery date. So for Black Ops 2, I said it'll deliver in December. I can pretty much guarantee that it'll deliver in November, just based on our current timetable. So we're always changing our formula, but there's just some things that we keep in place. And those are the two fundamental ones that we do from now on going forward.
All right, so I've got your Trump Space Force patch right here. I was a proud supporter of that book. So with those like little extra add-ons, like your people are doing stickers, we're seeing patches. I think there's a lot of like cards that people are included with it. Is that something that you want to like maybe put kind of on the side burner as something that you want to include? And because I'm me personally as a customer, I'm always about content. I want more pages. Or are you going to continue sticking with like patches and stuff like that?
What we try to do is.
Oh, did we lose him?
Did we lose Tim?
Oh,
his phone battery might be dying.
What I'm trying to do is.
So what do you have to say on that one, Mark? Are you guys, you still sticking with those? Oh, are you back, Tim?
Are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Tim, you're jumping
My
in
mic's
now.
gone. Oh, it's jumping in
it's
and out.
back now.
It was gone. It's just back now.
Okay, I think
Okay, it's back now. Okay.
Tim, are you using your phone? Or
No, my wife is. She's in the other room.
Oh, okay.
There might be.
I was going to say if you were connected via your phone, it might be that your phone, like the cache is starting to fill and then it's I've had that happen and then had to reconnect.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now though?
Yeah, you're good.
Hold on 1 second.
You got a good Verizon connection.
I know, right? For the perks, one thing that we do for the retail versus the Indiegogo version is the Indiegogo campaign version will always have more story pages than the retail version. So for Walmart, if you got the Indiegogo version, you actually got 8 extra pages, and it's a story. It's a story prologue that is not going to be in the retail version. Now, it might be in future campaign versions, but not in the retail editions. And for Black Ops 2, you actually get 8 more pages with that one as well. And I don't think we're going to hit our goal, but our $30,000 goal for Black Ops 2 was we were actually going to add more pages to it, because it's like, if you're going to pay me more money, I'm going to give you more story. But one thing we try to do is it's always this weird flux between people who want more. A lot of people like that stuff. Like they like the patches and pins and stickers and things like that. I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent when it comes to that type of thing, but people tend to like it. So hopefully we can deliver both. I mean, for Black Ops 2, if you get the book, you automatically get a bookmark with it, which is good. So it just depends. But yes, I do believe that if you're going to pay more for the campaign version, I think you should get more stuff. And so that's why we always guarantee more pages.
So, Pele, I know earlier you asked about is there going to be a retailer version? Are you happier, that there's that you're going to get the $5 rather than, maybe a $15 per issue book? Does it work out better for you that if it releases through Antarctic Press?
For some customers, yes. For others, no. Because a lot of them really love the graphic novel, higher quality edition, and that's really what they would prefer in a book like this. So, it's some will, because saving money. Saving money is the name of the game, and there's others that just they don't care if it's 15, 20 to $20. They'd rather pay that and get the card stock covers and the higher quality page stock. So it depends.
Here's the good news. The good news, though, is that because the book is so big, even without the 8 pages, so right now we're at 68. So minus 8 is 60. I don't think Antarctic was going to have any choice except to square bind that thing. It is a thick book.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. I mean, it's just there's always going to be people out there that'll want the square bound, heavier books. The higher quality book, but as opposed to the traditional wrap. So it's give or take. Probably most people would rather have the Antarctic Press book because the expense, but you're always going to have like the 1 in 5, 1 in 10, or whatever that are going to be like
the serious collector
would want the premium quality so they could have something on their shelf.
Mm-hmm. So Mark, I just want to ask you, you guys have done 5 crowdfunding campaigns now. If someone came up to you today and were like, I'm about to start my campaign, tell me 1 or 2 things that I need to keep in mind, that are complete pitfalls that can destroy a campaign or, potentially, harm my career moving forward to where I can, lose it all on this. What would you say to them?
Well, so first I would tell them to talk to Tim, because Tim is the one who handles all the logistics of the campaigns. So he's the one who's best to ask about things like how to get it printed, what the timetable is, like everything Tim just said like 5 minutes ago. I mean, that's all the best advice, because what a lot of the creators, so the people who are doing these Indiegogos are writers and artists. They're creators. They don't have a technical mindset on how to actually fulfill the book, how to print it. They know how to write a book, they know how to draw a book or color a book, but anything outside of that, outside of the fun part, they don't know. And I don't know either. That's why I leave this stuff up to Tim. I'm very, very lucky, and Tim is figuring out as he goes along, but he's been doing a great job of it. So what I recommend to anybody is that talk to someone who has successfully fulfilled books on what you have to do behind the scenes, what company you have to go with, the timetable it takes to do it, what paper you should use, what binding you should use, all of the nitty-gritty details. That's not fun. All of the homework and the accounting that you have to do, because you're basically doing this all on your own, and that means more than just making the comic. You also have to get it into people's hands. How are you going to package them? How are you going to mail them? How much is that going to cost? That kind of stuff. Figure all that out in advance, even if it's not fun, and then have fun making your comic, basically.
So if you were like someone that's just, creator focused, I'd only want to worry about the story, you would tell them, don't launch a campaign. You're not ready yet. You need to have a partner that is going to handle all the other stuff that you don't want to.
You need to either be able to figure it out yourself if you're doing it all on your own, or find someone who can help you and tell you how to do that. There are companies that actually do fulfillment, and Tim knows some of them. So get in contact with those fulfillment companies, and they'll do the thinking for you, because that's their job. That's what you're going to pay them a portion of your Indiegogo or Kickstarter profits to do for you. So they're going to figure that stuff out for you. So if you can't do it yourself, then there are people you can find. It'll take maybe a few dollars out of your bottom line, out of your profits to do it, but it will get the book out on time, and it'll save your reputation.
It's also only a one-time expense.
Yeah, exactly. So just do it. Plan for that, budget for that. If all of the numbers and scheduling is just over your head, it's just something you don't have the experience, and if you're also creating the book and it's just too much work, then there are fulfillment companies who can do that for you. It just takes a little bit more of your money, but it's worth it to get your book out. But from a creative angle, just if the person said, I can plan all that, I can get that company, but just as a creator to creator, what would you say? What's your advice? I mean, my advice is to And it sounds, so obvious, but my advice is just make your book. Don't spend your time doing other things. And Tim and I both have 40-hour-a-week day jobs. We make our comics whenever we have a spare minute. We spend it making our comics and writing our books. And I'm also writing my prose novels and short stories right now at the same time. Every minute I'm not at my day job, I am working on my writing, and that can be consuming. When you have to do that. Yeah, and it wears you out. And a lot of people end up like George R.R. Martin, where you end up with maybe you get your money first or something, or you just end up with your success and you promise something, and then you're like Game of Thrones book 5, whatever I think it is, still isn't out yet after like 6 years. Book 7, whatever. It's been so many years, and he's like, it's coming. I'm still working on it. He's not.
Oh, we're never on it. He's never finishing that.
He's never just going days and weeks without typing anything, without sitting down and writing a sentence, because he's just lost that momentum. So I know someone that knows him personally. That's I wouldn't say friends with him, but is an associate of his, and he says brilliant guy. Of course, that's obvious given the content and how well it's written. And everything. He is one of the laziest SOBs you've ever met. Yeah, and that's the thing is,
I've seen his waistline. I know.
Yeah. I mean, don't lose your momentum. And that's really what it is momentum, is that once you get started writing, or in some cases drawing, don't take a break. It's like when you go to the gym. You go to the gym every day, whether you feel like it or not. And so I go to the gym every day during my lunch hour. And there are days when I just want to spend my lunch hour taking a nap. But I go anyway, because if I take one day off, then suddenly I'll start taking 2 days off and 3 days off and 4 days off, and you lose that momentum. So if you write every day, if you take a day off from writing, that might become 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and then you're not writing or drawing anymore. And then you end up in that trap. Joe Madureira, one of Tim's favorite artists, and I like him quite a bit too, but he had the same problem. He was everywhere doing everything for a while in the 90s. Then he got very successful, and then he just kind of stopped drawing. And then his books started coming out really late, and he just wasn't getting his work out because he lost his momentum. So,
actually, Doc has talked about that a lot on the channel. But I was actually watching a documentary about a fighter one time, and he was talking about his mentality and on preparing for fights. And he says, every day there's a red check due, and it's due in the gym. If I don't go in there and pay my debt that day, I have to pay it twice the next day. And it'll all build up if I don't keep doing it. So I can't miss a day. And he's just obsessed with getting his time in. And, it's a good way to think about life, because, what you can put off to tomorrow, you can put off to the next day after that. And next thing you know, your days, weeks, next thing you know, years behind your time, like George R.R. Martin. So
exactly. So like when I'm writing like prose stories right now, so I'm working on some short stories that I want to submit to some magazines, and I look up their submission guidelines, and one of the magazines, they said the story maximum word count 7,500 words, and that's not as much as you think, especially if you want to get into a really detailed story, but you got to confine it to 7,500 words. But I sit down, and when I do my writing, all right, I'm going to write 1,000 words today. And if I write 1,000 words every day, I'll have this short story written in 7.5 days. And I stick to that, and I've got my short story written in a week. And you just have to, you can break it down like that into segments, turn one big job into 7 little jobs, just like doing housework. And then it makes it so much easier. You just got to find the right mentality to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. So, Tim, do you have like a checklist, or, I know you said you want to be 95% done with a project before you'll even consider launching it. But, are there other benchmarks that you're like, I haven't done this research, or I haven't got this ready? Or is there other things that you would tell, aspiring creators that want to launch on Indiegogo or Kickstarter that, you need to have these ducks in a row before you can even consider launching?
Yes, it all boils down to numbers. The other one that's really, really important, I'd say there's 3. One, if you're a first-time comic creator, know what your page sizes are. I mean, that's like a rookie mistake. Your typical comic book is going to be 6.625 by 10.25 inches. That's not including trim and bleed. Exactly. And so depending on which printer you use, they're going to require different specs. So that kind of hits two birds with one stone, because I was going to say that the next thing you need to know is who's going to do your printing and who's going to do your fulfillment. As Mark had pointed out, yes, as Mark had pointed out, there are fulfillment companies and there are printing companies, and some do both. But you have to quote your printers. Typically, it's not hard. There's a lot of them nowadays that you can go through. And there's a lot of them that are reliable. Some of them are more expensive, but the communication is a lot better. And some of them have better pricing, but the communication is terrible. Make sure that you have all those things locked down before you even begin or consider your campaign, because you're going to want those numbers in place to help you budget and to make sure that everything is on spec. Because the one thing you don't want is you don't want those hidden costs whenever it comes time to do digital pre-press. Because when you send those files over, if it's not in the format that they need, you're going to be in a world of hurt, because it's time that you have to take out for you to do it yourself, or it's money that you have to pay them to do for you. So those things kind of go hand in hand in terms of things that you have to watch out for when you're doing them. And Mark and I are shocked, because we've talked to several pros who, they run their campaign and it's like, who are you using for your printing and fulfillment? Oh, I don't know yet. It's like, how do you not know? I have a spreadsheet with our budget on it, so I know exactly how much is going into our campaign, and I know how much all of this is going to cost. And in the case of one printer, they actually let you lock down to quote for 60 days. So if something changes, like if there's a tariff that comes in that is not good for your bottom line, that doesn't matter, because they'll basically match your quote based on what they said 60 days before. If it gets better, hey, you get the better price. And so it's things like that it makes us scratch our heads, because we're like, hey, we're kind of idiots. We don't know what we're doing. I'm basically having to call these people and find out what's going on. But here we are, and we're basically on campaign number 5, and it's like, okay, we kind of got the hang of this. So don't make those rookie mistakes, and you should be good. And there's several creators who are amateurs, kind of like us, and they have everything together. They have it all figured out. But numbers are everything. Make sure that you do have all those in line before you launch anything, and make sure you have a spreadsheet where you have your budget down.
Awesome. And you're working with a new company, and like an upstart company that's going to be working with creators for crowdfunding, right?
Yeah, so it's called Iconic Comics. It's actually owned by the person who runs Bell County Comic Con, and he has a lot of office space. So one thing he's going to do is he's basically acting as fulfillment, not printing, but fulfillment. And his rate is very good for domestics. Right now, he's only doing the domestics, and he's actually going to be doing the fulfillment on Black Ops 2. So that gets to test his ability to fulfill, see how he does, and then he'll be taking requests in 2020 on a limited basis. So it's not an open platform. You basically have to show your work, and if it's something he wants for his imprint, then he'll gladly fulfill it. Now, even though he doesn't do the printing, basically I'm acting as an unpaid consultant for him, and I will give him many recommendations in terms of, if you're looking to crowdfund a campaign and you don't know who to go to for printing, don't worry about it. You can either contact him or contact me, and we can put you all in touch with the right people to do it. But the fulfillment part is hard for a lot of people, because even if you're trying to fulfill like 300 to 500 books, that's a lot of time and manpower that you have to take out to do that. So he's more than happy to take that burden based on the resources and the office space that he has.
Yeah, I think we all remember watching Diversity in Comics try and fulfill Ironsight, or is it Ironsights?
Yeah, Ironsights by himself.
Like his daily vlog of I shipped out 42 comics today, and I got I didn't put a date in all these books, and I got to ship out. So yeah, you don't want to be.
Fun.
I think he was fulfilling for like 70 days or something.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah.
So, all right. I think that just about wraps up our crowdfunding thing. Is there anything anyone wanted to say before we start wrapping it up and doing our recommendations? All right, no one spoke up. We're going to comic book recommendations, everybody. Jeremy, I know you're reading a lot of new stuff. What are you recommending this week, buddy?
Well, it was a good week for me this week. I got the Mighty Morphin, got the TMT, but I'm always going to recommend Batman Beyond. Terry's my boy. It's like basically just Spider-Man being trained by Bruce Wayne. Always check out Batman Beyond. That's going to be my main.
Did you see that Terry's getting replaced by a woman in December?
No, I did not. No, I'm sad. Thanks.
Dude, you got to watch my solicitations video, man.
Oh, I'm so busy. Sorry, man. Oh, I guess Curse of the White Knight also came out too. Curse of the White Knight. It's okay.
Also, if you're in the chats and you're watching, and you want to recommend comic books, throw it into the chat, and I will put it on the screen. We'll talk about your recommendations as well. So you're saying Batman Beyond, Curse of the Night Knight, Power Rangers.
I'm gonna definitely say Batman Beyond and Power Rangers, but Curse of the White Knight's been kind of. It's okay. It's okay. Might want to wait for the trade on this one. Yeah, the first one was really good. I'm gonna keep buying the floppies, but it's
dude. Okay. Where's my Green Lantern fix?
I don't know. I haven't seen the Green Lantern book in forever. I have to keep buying the old issues. I mean, it's sad.
Green Lantern's the best character in comics. You're not reading them anymore?
I'm still reading them, but I don't recommend them.
All right. So, Tim, I know you're not reading so many comics nowadays. Do you have any recommendations for this week for the reader or for the viewers?
I'm just going to echo probably what someone else is going to say. Pick up House of X, Powers of X. I have stopped reading those single issues. I know, right? I have stopped reading those single issues because I'm waiting for the trade. But just based on your reviews and what I've read to this point, I mean, it's pretty great. So if you're going to go to the shops, pick that up. Manga recommendations, I mean, you can pretty much just pick that up whenever you want. But I was actually really excited because it turns out Goblin Slayer Volume 6 just came out like 3 days ago. So I actually need to go to the store and pick up that volume probably this week.
All right, so House of X, Powers of 10, and Goblin Slayer. Also, speaking of House of X and Powers of 10, tomorrow, Comics Perch and Doc are coming on the channel, and we're gonna talk about some theories that have come in from our viewers. We're going to talk about the future for the Dawn of X titles, X-Men, Marauders, Excalibur, New Mutants, Fallen Angels, and I think I'm forgetting one. Oh, X-Force. And where we think those are all going to spin out of the current storyline. And then I had solicited for questions on Twitter and on the community tab here on YouTube. So if you have questions for Perch or for Doc about X-Men, go into that tab or hit me up on Twitter, and I will make sure and include those. All right, who's next? Doc, what are you recommending? You got homework for the viewers for X-Men?
You know what? A little bit. There's two things that I'm going to recommend outside of House of X, Powers of X. Mm-hmm. One would be, now this is some old stuff. You can probably find it relatively cheap. I just read it for the first time. I reread it after reading it when I was like 8. The Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown 4-issue prestige format miniseries. I think it was, let me look at this. I think it was $350 per issue when it came out.
Yeah, it was expensive at the time. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was $350. It was done actually through Epic Comics rather than regular Marvel, but it is set in mostly X-Men continuity. It's hard to tell because there was one mention of the fact that they died, but it said in Houston, and the X-Men died in Dallas. But it's done by Walt and Louise Simonson, with John Muth doing art for the Havoc sections and Kent Williams doing art for the Wolverine sections.
And that is some trippy art. I mean, it is trippy.
It is
wild.
It is. It's got this kind of like really twisted Bill Sienkiewicz kind of vibe to it. But it's all looks like it was a lot of watercolor painting.
It was you could tell that it was painted and not drawn for the most part, especially the Wolverine parts, and it is just I won't say that it's gorgeous, but it is really, really intricate and well done.
Yeah, I was posting some stuff about it as I was reading it last weekend. And yeah, it's good. I recommend going out and picking it up. You could probably find it in like $1 or $2 bins because it's not super sought after. It's not important, but it's just a good story of Wolverine and Havoc and a bunch of characters that were created for that series. I think that they might have planned on using one of them to continue, but they never did. But yeah, go pick that up. It's good. It's a good fun read.
Awesome. So Ash on Comics, a fellow YouTuber, friend of the channel. He's on the Aficionados a lot. You should go subscribe and watch his videos. It's saying he's recommending next week Batman TMNT Volume 3, Number 6. I definitely agree with that.
There you go, Mark. Time to finish it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can finally read that one. I can't wait.
That's the only one I've ever read. It's actually really good.
Damn it, Jeremy. Shut up. I'm trying to talk here. Come on. Dominic Powell is recommending Living Color, Motley Crue, Poison, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. He's after my heart.
For music? Yeah.
Oh, man. What are we doing music for?
FF2
I share a birthday with Joan Jett. It's pretty cool.
God damn it, Jeremy. What are you doing to me? Also, FF2 is recommending My Hero Academia, Vinland Saga, Berserker, Curse of the White Knight, Hawks and Pox for anime, Vinland Saga, and Demon Slayer. Hendrix is recommending Inuyasha, Fantasy Romance Action, and Red Eyes Kyo, Fantasy Action, and they're both completed. I think we got all the recommendations. Oh, wait, Skip is recommending Criminal. I definitely agree with that one, but I will get to that. Pele, Creepy.
Yeah.
Mark Pellegrini, what are you recommending this week?
So the only thing that I'm reading right now is Transformers Ghostbusters, and it's really good. It has no bar for entry, so you don't have to be reading either Transformers or Ghostbusters comic to jump into it. It's canon to the ongoing Ghostbusters book, but the Transformers book has nothing to do with what the IDW comic is doing. It's really funny. It's really clever. If you know both Ghostbusters and Transformers, you'll appreciate the heck out of the comic because it works in concepts and ideas from both shows and both canons in really clever ways. It has this new character named Ectotron, and it's the Ecto-1 transforming into a robot. They also made a toy out of it. You can get at GameStop. It's really cool. And it's so cool. I mean, it is a great read right now. For older stuff, I'm finally digging into Usagi Yojimbo. I've read a lot of Usagi Yojimbo, but sporadically. Like I pick up one of the old digests, or I have some like random like one issues, but I haven't read it from beginning to end. So I'm starting that journey right now, and the book just right off the bat is so good. It reads so fluidly. The art, Stan Sakai's art, is just fantastic, and the way it's written is that it's got an overarching story, but the overarching story, it's not in a hurry to knock down these arcs. It's not written in trade-friendly 6-issue digestible storylines. He's on this journey. There are these different political players like Lord Hikiji and Lord Hebi and all these people who are kind of like out there doing things. And Miyamoto Usagi is just wandering around feudal Japan, and sometimes he intersects with this main overarching story. Most of the time he's just having one-off encounters with bounty hunters and different characters. But it's so charming, but also exciting and gory. I mean, he cuts people up, but it's not it's not exploitative. It's just one of the best comics I've ever read, and I've always wanted to go back and read the whole thing from beginning to end. And now I'm doing that, and it's wonderful. So I recommend Usagi Yojimbo. You can pick up. So for Usagi Yojimbo, for anybody who wants to start it, there's 2 collections that you need to be aware of. There's Usagi Yojimbo, the special edition, which collects the original run, Volume 1, that was published with Fantagraphics. And so you can get that in a box set, and it's the entire Fantagraphics run that starts the story. From there, pick up Usagi Yojimbo Saga, which are the big trade collections, and they start with Saga Volume 1, and that collects the second series of Usagi Yojimbo stories that were published by Mirage and then Dark Horse. So get special edition and then Usagi Yojimbo Saga, and then just read your way through it. I cannot recommend it enough.
Awesome. So I got a question for you before we move on. My son is the world's biggest Transformers mark right now, specifically Bumblebee. Is he going to be able to read that Transformers, or am I going to be able to read that Transformers crossover?
Absolutely.
book?
It is not over. It's not over his head. So the Transformers IDW comics, for the most part, I don't recommend. I don't like them. They're very boring. They're very self-indulgent. But this comic is not written by the IDW Transformers team. It's written by Eric Burnham, who writes the Ghostbusters book, which is, I'd call it an all ages book. It's appropriate for everyone. And so I think he would really like it. It's got very colorful, vibrant, cartoonish art. It's very exciting to look at, and it's very fun to read. So I think if your son's a Transformers fan, he would really enjoy that book.
He is a Transformers super freak right now. He's got
Bumblebee, right,
Optimus Prime, Megatron, and was it Starscream? And
so what version of Transformers does he like? Does he like Generation 1? Is he into the live action movies? What's his deal?
Loves the live action movie. The Bumblebee movie is what hit him off. He already had the Transformers toys, but he saw that movie and he's lost it.
You gotta get him into Gen 1 though, man. Gotta get him to watch that Gen 1 stuff. I think he'd like it. It still holds up.
Maybe.
He'd probably like show him the movie, the 1986 movie, Transformers movie, the classic. I bet he'd be into that one.
Well, he's a little bit young for that one. I remember watching that. He'd probably be like 10.
Oh, yeah. I forget. Yeah, Optimus Prime does have a sad death scene. There is a little bit of cursing in that movie. And maybe give him another year if he's still into Transformers. Then he'd be into that.
Oh, he's going to be into Transformers. I'm going to make sure of that. That's why I'm finding more Transformer comics for him. But it's good to know about that series because the IDW Transformers is garbage and you can't read it to kids.
No, it's awful. So here's the funny thing. So Tim and I, we've gone to Universal Studios Florida, and they have the Transformers, the ride there, the 3D ride, which is awesome. But you get out of the ride, and of course, it empties into the gift shop. And the gift shop is stocked with the IDW Transformers comics. And I feel so sorry for the kid who got to choose one item from that gift shop after getting off the ride and being pumped for Transformers. And he chose like Transformers Lost Light comic book. And he's sitting in the car ride home after a day at Universal, and he's trying to read that book, and it's terrible, and he's rejecting. He's just like resenting the fact that he asked for that from the gift shop instead of something cooler. Because those books aren't written for kids.
They're not. They're based on toys, but they're only written for like 30-year-old weebs.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense to me. All right. That's my rant. But if anyone has recommendations for Transformers comic books, specifically Bumblebee, I have a son in serious need of it, and he loves
the Marvel. Go the Marvel.
Shoot out the
Go
beacon.
the
Help me
Marvel
out.
series, the original Marvel series from 1987. Get that. It's great. Bill Sienkiewicz artwork is really, really cool. It's just good. It's really, really well written.
Oh, yeah.
It's not gratuitously nasty
Is there
violence.
a trade for that? Because I get
there is.
floppies are
Yes,
ridiculous.
there is.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a really good collectible that will have, that will have enduring appeal as far as value and whatnot as a good investment, then the first prints of those are really good too. So,
awesome.
but yeah, get that, and he'll really enjoy it.
Oh, they're great books. Maybe they're a little wordy just because of the time they were written, but I think if you're trying to get your son to read, having wordier comics is actually a good thing.
That's what we're doing.
Oh yeah, and they're so much fun.
Yeah. There's a nobility involved in it, and they act more like the space knights that you would expect instead of the whiny, self-indulgent assholes that they're written as in a lot of other.
Oh yeah, what I like about the Marvel comic, the old Transformers comic, is that it, like you said, it was written for maybe people who are a little older than the target audience of the cartoon. So it's a bit more sophisticated, but it's not over anybody's head. It doesn't have any delusions about what it is. So every issue is introducing a new toy. But writers back then didn't, like Larry Hama, who wrote the G.I. Joe comic book, and Simon Furman and Bob Budiansky, who wrote the the Transformers comic in the 80s, they didn't see the whole every issue we've got to advertise a new toy thing as being an obstacle. It was an opportunity. It was someone handing them a new idea instead of having to come up with it themselves. Like, someone just gave me a new idea. Now I can write another issue and I can base it around this. It almost made the writing easier. And the comic has a lot of fun with that. I think it's called Transformers Classics and trade paperback. You can find those on Amazon. Yep.
Yeah, there's the mini series, and then there was an ongoing
issue. Transformers Classics Volume 3. But I would absolutely love to have 1 and 2. All right, back to recommendations. Dominic Powell, friend of the channel. He's been on the Aficionados before. He's a great guy and is an aspiring artist as well. He's recommending The Promised Neverland, Dr. Stone, and My Hero Academia, among other anime and manga. For comics, Justice League 32, House of X number 6, Rising Stars by Michael J. Straczynski, and Birthright 39. All right. Pele, what are you recommending from the store this week?
All right. Harleen from DC. No, I'm just kidding. That's absolutely terrible. That's absolutely terrible. Don't anybody read that. Oh, okay. God.
I have an issue with the artist, but I mean,
the artist is amazing.
The artist is a great cover artist. Interior, he is just.
Anyway.
Did you read the book?
What I would recommend is it's a little bit of homework. True Believers Hulks have been released this last week. It's like Devil Hulk, Red Hulk, and the other Hulks, and it kind of explains a lot of what's going on as far as Immortal Hulk right now, and they're all really excellent. Buck a piece. Also, there's the Immortal Hulk director's cuts. Number 4 is out this week. It's really, really good. Pick that up. It's $5, but it really goes into the skinny of what's going on behind the scenes, and they talked a little bit about the artist or what challenges he's had as far as in the series and stuff like that to date. And of course, House of X, Powers of X number 5. Really getting into the groove right now of the story. I don't want to give anything away, but it is pretty powerful right now. And we're winding it up, and I think that this number 6 of each of the associative series are going to do a lot of cleanup work and get us prepped up for X-Men and the other X titles going forward. So these are books that you're going to be going back to if you're going to be invested in the X-Men titles ongoing after this. These are books that you're going to be going back to as touchstones, as the series progress, because there's a lot of really valuable information in them. Very important.
It's so good to hear now. I'm so happy to hear some positive comic news now. It's making me feel good.
So, Doc, we have a question from the viewers for you. Doc, why is Nine Fingers so sexy?
It's all the hair.
It's the hair.
It's all the hair.
Tell her to get off the stream. Watch your football.
It's the hair, because you can kind of grab it and pull back.
Get off the internet, woman.
I do have one other recommendation that I totally forgot. They re-released actually a reproduction of Battle Chasers Anthology. Came out last week.
I want to read that because I want to play the game. So how much is that?
$30.
$30.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Yeah, now that's everything, right?
Oh, all 9 issues.
The game looks great. I've been wanting to.
It does not include the 6-page or 8-page story that was the actual first appearance of Battle Chasers, which was in Frank Frazzetta's Fantasy Illustrated number 2. Which was a magazine size format. It was, yeah.
You're saying there's a new one, because the one I see on Prime right now is $480.
Yes, there's a new one that
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, Battle Chasers Anthology.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I found the new one for $18. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. The old one was absurdly expensive.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good book for $480.
Well, I mean, it's out of print, and it was the only way to get it in a collected edition, and it was also a hardcover, and hardcovers tend to go out of print and then never come back.
I'm adding to my list here stuff I want to buy later. That's
all right.
Read that. Thanks, man, for bringing that up. Hate the stream.
Also in the chats, Edmundo is recommending Space Bandits next week. I agree with that. Mango Bet is recommending Ragnarok Breaking of Helheim. You stole my thunder. FF2 is looking for music recommendations because most of today's music is gibberish. I'm telling you, get you some Counting Crows, man. It'll mellow you out. It's great.
I'm going to fly to the Philippines and set you on fire.
Hey, listen, bro. It's my show.
We lost Mark.
Oh, no, we lost Mark. So if you have any music recommendations for FF2, please put it in the comment section. Oh, Stone Sour, that's a pretty decent one. Also, so for the buy comic book recommendations, I'm recommending Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2. You can get these with Black Ops Hare Trigger. The link for the Indiegogo account is in the video description. If you need to hear more about it, like you were here at the beginning, Tim and Mark both did a great job selling the comic book at the very beginning of the stream. It was very good having us on. As far as this week's comic books goes, Criminal number, was it number 8 or 9? Criminal number 8, Freedom Fighters number 9, as well as Ragnarok Breaking Helheim number 2 are my recommendations. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Tim, if people want to follow you or ask you questions about Black Ops Hare Trigger, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter. My handle is @PotusStump. That's basically a smorgasbord of things I talk about. Some politics, a lot of memes, artwork. If they want, they can follow me at Ninja Inc. Art if they just want like the art, but I don't update it as much. I try to do it once a day, and that's pretty much it. But Black Ops Hare Trigger is on Indiegogo right now. I'm out there. You can just find my stuff on Amazon, on Antarctic Press. We have a lot of stuff over the last couple of years that we've done, covers for comics and our own books, 8 in total as of this year. So hit me up. I'm always checking my DMs.
Awesome. Thank you. So, like I said, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing Mark on. He was a great guest. We are going to do another.
For that too. Where can we follow Mark at?
I believe it's @Pele. Is it _creepy or is it just creepy?
It's just one word, @Pele creepy. And he says in the chat, my headset battery died. Mm-hmm. Dang these 3 hours stream. But
yeah, it was great having him. And we are going to do like a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stream up for the issue 100 of City of War. And I believe Bats is going to be there. And I have a couple other turtle freaks that I want to bring on with Mark again. And we're gonna get even more turtle-rific on that one. So thank you so much for Mark. Definitely follow him at Pele Creepy. Jeremy, people want to see you and maybe hear you talk about your girlfriend. Where can they find you on?
I don't talk about that much. Just minus one digit on Twitter. That's all I really am at.
Yeah,
basically the same name on YouTube, but who cares what I'm doing on YouTube?
He basically brags about having a girlfriend every day now. So
yeah,
he's not as interesting as he used to be. All right, Doc.
He's probably not as frustrated as he was.
Definitely not. Doc, where
can
people
more release?
All right, Doc might be gone. Pele.
No, I'm here. No, I'm here. I'm just waiting for everybody to shut the fuck up.
Wow. Yeah, you know my life.
You can find me on Twitter @ScienceJesus.
Thank you so much. That was very enlightening. Pele, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at @just_Pele. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter's. Instagram and talk about new release, new acquisitions and stuff like that, back issues for the shop and for my personal collection. Sometimes I show some kind of interesting, weird, neat stuff on there and talk mostly about comics. Twitter tends to get a bit more political, but I still talk about comics and all that. And if you have any questions about comic collecting or grading or anything having to do with values and comic investing, things of that nature, just hit me up and I'll do the best I can. All
right. Like I said, it was a great show. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm Wes from Thinking Critical YouTube. I'm signing out. Solomon Poe, and it's time to dance. Ooh.